Chapter 820. Her strength will decline, her talent will weaken, her intelligence will degenerate, her appearance will age rapidly, and she may even lose her memory. Hearing Corpse Demon King's words, Nye Tian froze on the spot for a full 10 seconds, his whole body empty. He never thought that the desolation-forbidden power in the ice-forbidden stone would be so terrifying. It was a power that could deprive everything. Master! Seeing Nye Tian standing there in a daze, Corpse Demon King tried to call out to him. Although he already knew this would happen, the situation at that time was extremely urgent, so he could only use the ice-forbidden stone to imprison Rui Qianyu, which was the only way to prolong her life. How long? Nye Tian finally reacted, his eyes filled with an indescribable complexity. If Rui Qianyu became a useless idiot, coupled with old age, Nye Tian would never be able to live in peace for the rest of his life. After all, he was the one who made the decision to imprison Rui Qianyu in the ice-forbidden stone. Not necessarily, Corpse Demon King said in a deep voice. The effect of the desolation-forbidden power is related to the martial artist's martial body, Yuan spirit, and Yuan meridian. The stronger the martial artist, the higher his talent, the greater his resistance to the desolation-forbidden power. With Rui Qianyu's talent, it will take at least half a year, and at most a year. Half a year. Hearing this time, Nye Tian finally relaxed a little, and the gloomy expression on his face eased a little. In half a year, he must find a way to break the ice-forbidden stone. Corpse Demon King, do you know how to break the ice-forbidden stone? Nye Tian asked abruptly. Although he knew the chances were slim, he still hoped to get lucky. I don't know. Corpse Demon King shook his head and said, in this world, there is only one person who knows how to break the ice-forbidden stone. Other than this person, even the Demon King doesn't know. Who? Nye Tian's eyes trembled, revealing a burning passion. That person is the same as me, one of the 9 Demon Kings under the Demon King, Ice Snow Devil King. Corpse Demon King said in a deep voice. Frost Devil King. Nye Tian's eyes darkened. He had never heard of this name before. Although Nye Tian already knew that there were 9 great demon monarchs under the demon sovereign, he did not have many dealings with them. Where is he? Nye Tian asked again. Corpse Demon Monarch sighed and said, when I left the 9 underworlds, Ice Demon Monarch was still in 9 underworlds. But at that time, he was already 900 years old, reaching the limit of his lifespan. Now that more than 100 years have passed, he should have fallen long ago. Thinking of the fall of an old friend, Corpse Demon Monarch suddenly felt like a lifetime had passed. Fallen? Nye Tian's heart sank. He then asked, does the Frost Devil King have any children or disciples? Corpse Demon Monarch shook his head and said, as far as I know, no. No! Nye Tian's face changed. The burning desire in his eyes was extinguished in an instant. This was like a drowning person who had just grabbed a straw, and with a gentle tug, the straw broke. This kind of feeling made people feel despair. Master, you don't have to worry too much. We still have at least half a year. That girl will be fine. Corpse Demon Monarch comforted, but this kind of comfort was very weak. Even the 9 underworlds demon sovereign did not know how to break the ice-forbidden stone, so how could Nye Tian find a way in half a year? Yes. At this moment, Nye Tian nodded slightly. The despair in his eyes was swept away and replaced with the same firmness as before. He had made a decision in his heart. After the wind and cloud trial, he would go to the snow domain ice field. That was where the ice-forbidden stone came from. Perhaps he could find a way. After settling his heart, Nye Tian quickened his pace. Soon, he returned to his jade mansion. Nye Tian, how is that girl? Seeing Nye Tian return, Sun Hai asked with concern. She's fine for the time being. Nye Tian let out a long sigh and forced a smile on his face. That's good. Although Sun Hai could see Nye Tian's reluctance, he could only comfort him. Nye Tian became cold. He immediately remembered that he still had to take Sun Hai to see Jean de Bao, so he said, "Mr. Sun, de Bao is in the Jade Mansion. Come with me." "Yes." Sun Hai nodded and followed behind Nie Tian. They came to the courtyard where Jean de Bao and the others were. When they were dozens of meters away from the courtyard, Sun Hai felt a strong aura of a spiritual array, which was even accompanied by a huge spiritual force. He couldn't help but frown and look at Nie Tian. De Bao and the others are practicing cultivation in the spell formation, Nie Tian said with a plain tone. This. Outside the courtyard, Sun Hai saw the spirit-gathering formation in the courtyard, felt the powerful aura of the spirit-gathering formation, and saw a layer of dazzling starlight surging outside the spirit-gathering formation. He was stunned and speechless. Lu Shan and the others also looked at the spiritual array in a daze, their faces full of disbelief. Sun Hai had seen a lot of spiritual arrays, but it was the first time he saw a spiritual array that could release spiritual force. "Mr. Nie, this spiritual array can increase a warrior's spiritual force?" After a while, Sun Hai finally reacted. He gulped and asked, "Yes." Nie Tian nodded slightly and said, "I used a rank 7 spirit gathering array, and at the same time, added some herbs that are helpful for spiritual force cultivation, and barely managed to arrange this spiritual array. It's really terrifying." Sun Hai was shocked. He could hear that Nie Tian was obviously avoiding something, but he didn't ask again. After all, it was Nie Tian's secret. "Nie Tian, when can de Bao and the others come out?" Sun Hai calmed down and asked lightly. 10 days later. Nie Tian nodded and said. Jean de Bao and the others had already been in the spiritual array for more than half a month. In another 10 days, the aura of the spiritual array would weaken, and then they could come out. At this time, Nie Tian could already feel that Jean de Bao, Xian Miao, and Han Tian's strength and spiritual force had increased. Especially Xian Miao, her spiritual force had already reached rank 35, and only half a month had passed. In 10 days, her spiritual force would most likely reach rank 40. He wondered what Fire Armor's expression would be when he saw Xian Miao again. Then, Sun Hai and Nie Tian chatted for a while, then prepared to leave and come back in 10 days. However, Lu Shan didn't want to leave. She stared at Nie Tian with her big eyes and said very seriously, "Brother, you can go back first. I'll stay with him." "Sister, you." Sun Hai looked at Lu Shan helplessly and didn't know how to persuade her. Lu Shan nodded and smiled. "I'll stay with him because I'm afraid something will happen to him. Otherwise, when we reach the forbidden land of wind and cloud, who will protect me?" Nie Tian was slightly speechless. He couldn't help but shake his head and said to Sun Hai, "Mr. Sun, don't worry. She'll be fine with me." "Then I'll have to trouble you." Sun Hai was very helpless. He glanced at Lu Shan and prepared to leave. However, at this time, a voice suddenly came from the void. "What a strange spiritual array. I wonder if it can withstand my palm?" The voice was clear and bright, with a hint of ridicule. Nie Tian and the others looked towards the source of the voice. In midair, a red-haired girl was standing. Looking from afar, she had a beauty that could topple cities. However, this red-haired girl's body was surging with a violent aura, as if she was very angry. Chapter 8:21. The red-haired girl, who had suddenly arrived above the Jade Mansion, slammed her palm down on the spirit array. In the void, as the red-haired girl slammed her palm down, an endless scarlet light spread out, releasing a scorching and violent aura that pressed down on the spirit array. "Stop!" Seeing this, Nie Tian roared angrily and soared into the sky. A terrifying sword intent instantly bloomed, and the sword light shot out a kilometer away. This red-haired girl was not weak. She was actually at the 9th level of heavenly evolution, and she seemed to have a very strong bloodline power in her body. The power that erupted from her palm was not weaker than a first-level heaven human warrior. If this palm hit the spiritual array, it would definitely shatter the spiritual array. A 7th-grade spirit-gathering array was of a very high level, but unfortunately, it was not a defensive spirit array. How could it withstand the red-haired girl's palm? Boom! In the void, the sword's shadow rose against the momentum and collided with the strange scarlet light, producing a violent sound. Nie Tion's figure rushed up. He was less than 100 meters away from the red-haired girl, so he could clearly see her appearance. The other party was not old, about 15 or 16 years old, about the same age as Lu Shan. However, her strength was much higher than Lu Shan's, reaching the astonishing 9th level of heavenly evolution. Xian Qiu reached the 9th level of heavenly evolution in his 20s, and was already one of the 9 demons. This red-haired girl was only 15 or 16 years old, but she was also at the 9th level of heavenly evolution. Her talent was far higher than Xian Qiu's, and even higher than the leader of the 9 demons, Qian Long Yingzheng. This girl's talent was the strongest person Nie Tian had encountered since he came to the Sumi world. This girl is so strong. Sun Hai also sensed the red-haired girl's strength, and could not help but exclaim in surprise. With this girl's strength and talent, she should not be a nobody in the Sumi world, but Sun Hai had never seen or heard of her. The Sumi world represented the 19 people with supreme martial talent, 1 emperor, 3 kings, 6 evils, and 9 demons. Although Sun Hai had not seen all of these 19 people, he had heard of them, but he had never heard of the existence of a red-haired girl. It was obvious that this red-haired girl was not among the 19 people and should be a hidden genius. The red-haired girl stared at Nie Tian with her clear eyes. She was surprised for a moment, but then she smiled disdainfully and said, "You're not bad to be able to receive my palm strike with the strength of the 5th level of heavenly evolution. Who are you?" Nie Tian looked at the other party and asked coldly. As soon as the woman arrived, she attacked the spiritual array. If Nie Tian had not reacted in time, the spiritual array would have been destroyed and the 3 people inside would have been injured. This woman looked innocent and pure, but her attacks were extremely vicious. "I'm here to find Nie Tian. Do you know where he is?" the red-haired girl said arrogantly. Nie Tian was slightly stunned. He didn't expect the other party to be looking for him. However, he didn't know the person in front of him at all. "I am Nie Tian," Nie Tianling said coldly. "You're Nie Tian? Ah, that's right. You're the silver-haired cultivator, so you must be Nie Tian." The red-haired girl was startled at first, then she murmured. Her pretty face slowly became gloomy and she rebuked, "You're the one who injured Big Brother Mo? Big Brother Mo?" Nie Tian was stunned for a moment, then he immediately understood that the person she was talking about was Mo Yoshang. His gaze darkened and he said, "You're from the Heavenly Demon Cult? How did you know?" The red-haired girl was stunned and was quite shocked. "You're here to take revenge for Mo Yoshang," Nie Tian continued. "How did you know?" The red-haired girl was startled again and her delicate face scrunched up. Seeing her reaction, Nie Tian couldn't help but shake his head and say, "Leave." This girl was the same as the siblings Duanmu Lu and Duanmu Weiner. She was inexperienced and a greenhorn. She didn't know anything and came out to take revenge. "What do you mean?" The red-haired girl looked strangely at Nie Tian and said, "Today, I'm here to take revenge for Big Brother Mo. I'm going to kill you." "Kill me?" Nie Tian felt the other party's anger and sneered, "Have you killed anyone before?" This red-haired girl only had anger and no killing intent. Nie Tian suspected that she hadn't killed anyone before. A real killer's gaze was cold, but the red-haired girl's eyes were clear. Although there was anger, there was also coldness. "You're looking down on me?" The red-haired girl finally reacted. Her face changed and she roared. Her body released a scarlet light that spread out like a tide. Observing the scarlet light from a close distance, Nie Tian discovered that there was something like blood in the light. It was somewhat similar to the Xian family's blood jade mystical sand. Bloodline power. Nie Tian had suspected that the red-haired girl had bloodline power, and now he was even more certain. Moreover, this bloodline power was extremely similar to the Xian family's blood jade mystical sand. It was also very powerful, and belonged to the same level of bloodline power. As the scarlet light spread out, a scarlet demonic lotus that released a strange aura appeared behind the red-haired girl. The reason why it was called a demonic lotus was because the petals danced in the air, emitting a strong demonic aura. It gave people a very bewitching feeling. This red-haired girl's strength is very terrifying. The people below felt the strange aura released by the scarlet demonic lotus, and their hearts couldn't help but tremble. No one would have thought that the seemingly weak red-haired girl would actually have such strength. Sun Hai guessed that this red-haired girl's strength was definitely not weaker than an ordinary Heaven Realm martial artist. She might even be stronger than an ordinary first-tier Heaven Realm martial artist. Nie Tian looked at the red-haired girl and his eyes narrowed. With the appearance of the scarlet demonic lotus, the clarity in her eyes dimmed. It was as if her entire person had become demonic and ruthless. The scarlet demonic lotus had some kind of strange power that seemed to affect the red-haired girl's state of mind. Master, this demonic lotus is strange. You have to be careful. Corpse Luo Devil Monarch sensed that something was wrong and nervously reminded Nie Tian. Nie Tian nodded and instantly became much more cautious. Nie Tian, how's my blood jade demonic lotus? Are you afraid? The corner of the red-haired girl's mouth curled up proudly. The demonic lotus behind her bloomed, and a terrifying aura was released. At that moment, there was a hint of coldness in the red-haired girl's eyes, which was very different from before. The blood jade demonic lotus had changed her state of mind. Blood jade demonic lotus. Hearing this name, Nie Tian was slightly stunned. He immediately thought of the Xian family's blood jade mystical sand. The blood jade demonic lotus and the blood jade mystical sand were two very similar bloodline powers. Nie Tian guessed that the red-haired girl should be from the Yu family. Huijia had said that when the Xian family and the Yu family founded the Black Moon Empire together, it was not strange that the two families had similar bloodline powers. Back then, the Yu family had been exterminated by the Xian family, and only the heavenly devil cult master, Yu Rushuang, had survived. The girl in front of him should be Yu Rushuang's descendant. This girl's strength and talent were not low, so her position in the heavenly devil cult should be very high. Nie Tian's guess was right. The red-haired girl was indeed Yu Rushuang's descendant, and she was in existence second only to the heavenly devil cult master. Chapter 822. Nie Tian, are you really afraid? Eugene, the heavenly demon saintess, saw that Nie Tian did not speak, and the smile on her face became more obvious. At the same time, a cold light was released from her eyes. She said coldly, "It's too late to be afraid now." As soon as she finished speaking, Eugene's body trembled slightly. The blood jade demonic lotus trembled in the void and released endless red flames that formed into a continuous stretch. The surrounding space of hundreds of meters was directly turned into a sea of fire. Huh! Nie Tian's figure was wrapped in flames, and he could not help but narrow his eyes. He immediately retreated a few hundred meters away. However, the red flames were like maggots in a tarsal bone, sticking to Nie Tian and pouring into his body. Nie Tian frowned slightly, and the power of thunder gushed out of his body, directly shaking the red flames out of his body. Nie Tian, pay for Brother Mo's death with your life. But at this time, Eugene let out a shout, and the sea of fire around her turned into a huge flame flower, suddenly blossoming in the air. Layer upon layer of blazing flames surged out and spread wildly towards Nie Tian. Be careful! The crowd could not help but worry for Nie Tian when they saw this scene. They were thousands of meters away, but they could still feel the powerful burning power of the flames, which was terrifying. A layer of dark blue light shone on Nie Tian's body, and the sky armor of Waterpole was activated. At this moment, a terrible flame spread in front of him, and then a terrible aura of destruction shrouded him. Boom! The fierce flames raged in the space, and the whole space was burning. The sky was red, and a demonic and violent aura covered half of the sky. Nye Tion's body shook slightly, and the power of thunder surged out from his body. The purple-gold sea of thunder appeared again, intertwining with the red flames, colliding and devouring each other. The whole void was almost torn under the confrontation of the two forces. Nye Tion's figure flickered and retreated hundreds of meters away. The blood jade demonic lotus was very powerful. Even with the protection of the water pole yuan heavenly armor, Nye Tion still found it difficult to resist the burning of the flames. Stop being so overbearing. Otherwise, I won't go easy on you. Nye Tion stood tall in the void and said cold. Although Yu Jin's strength was strong, it was not enough for Nye Tion to put him in his eyes. Just now, he had been defending and did not attack because he did not want to hurt a martial arts genius. Moreover, Yu Jin was naive and did not have any schemes. She was not an evil person, so Nye Tion did not want to hurt her. However, if the other party continued to pester him, Nye Tion would be enraged. "You're welcome." Yu Jin sneered contemptuously, and the chill in her eyes grew even colder as she mocked. "This young lady would like to see how impolite you will be." Nye Tion's eyes narrowed, and a touch of coldness flashed in his eyes. He did not want to waste any more time with the person in front of him. Yu Jin also seemed to be annoyed, and the blood jade demonic lotus behind her became even more terrifying. When it fully bloomed, it was as large as 1,000 meters, and the whole sky was filled with white and red flames. And in the center of the demonic lotus, there was a mass of black brilliance flowing, as if it wanted to break the control of the demonic lotus and be released. Nye Tion's eyebrows furrowed. He could immediately tell that it was the ball of black light that was releasing a ruthless aura. Every time the black light grew stronger, the coldness in Yu Jin's eyes grew stronger. It's that black brilliance that is affecting her state of mind. Nye Tion understood, and his eyes became slightly complicated. Yu Jin did not seem to understand this situation. If this situation continued, Yu Jin was very likely to be affected by the black brilliance and become a murderous devil. "I really want to see, what is that thing?" Nye Tion shouted. His silhouette flickered, and his entire body flashed with the terrifying power of thunder. His entire person was like a bolt of lightning, rushing straight towards Yu Jin. When everyone saw this, their eyes trembled, and they didn't know what Nye Tion was going to do. The blood jade demonic lotus was extremely powerful, and Nye Tion was rushing straight towards it. Wasn't he seeking death? Just as Nye Tion rushed towards the center of the demonic lotus, the mass of black brilliance suddenly became violent, and then condensed into an extremely strange face. It swayed in the air, as if it was laughing at Nye Tion. "You're courting death." As the black face appeared, Yu Jin's expression suddenly became violent. Her delicate facial features twisted together, and she looked extremely ferocious. She was like a completely different person from her previous innocent self. Immediately after, the blood jade demonic lotus shook violently, and a sea of fire that covered the sky and covered the earth rushed towards Nye Tion. "Heaven shrouding totem, open!" Nye Tion felt a scorching hot aura that made him suffocate. His entire body was drenched in sweat, and even his skin felt like it was burning. However, he didn't retreat. With a roar, an endless amount of starlight gushed out from his body, and the heaven-shrouding totem transformed into a starlight shield that wrapped around Nye Tion's entire body. After several battles, Nye Tion's usage of the heaven-shrouding totem had become more flexible. He could already control the shape and even the size of the heaven-shrouding totem at will. The heaven-shrouding totem was activated, and Nye Tion directly broke through the endless sea of fire. The red flames were all blocked by the heaven-shrouding totem. Nye Tion's silhouette was like lightning, and in the blink of an eye, he was only a few meters away from Yu Jin. He was only a few meters away from the strange black face, and he could clearly see every inch of the face. The face was condensed from a black brilliance, and it looked like a flame. However, within the flame, there was a terrifying power surging, and there seemed to be black runes revolving around it. It was extremely strange. The aura of a soul. In the black runes, Nyetian actually felt the aura of a soul, which made him turn pale with fright. Within the black brilliance, there was actually a terrifying soul hidden. Quack quack. At this time, the black face actually laughed, and it let out an ear-piercing laughter, which filled Nyetian's mind. Human brat, you can't save her. She will be swallowed by me, and become my flesh puppet. Ha ha. The extremely evil voice echoed in Nyetian's mind, and then the black face disappeared, as if it had never existed. Nyetian's gaze became slightly dignified, and his expression couldn't hide his astonishment. Even though he was the #1 war god in the heaven realm in his previous life, he had never seen such a strange thing. That black face hidden in the blood jade demonic lotus, what was it? It seemed to be a remnant soul, and this remnant soul wanted to swallow Eugene and replace her. Nyetian, you're courting death. At this time, Eugene's eyes regained their clarity, and with a delicate shout, the blood jade demonic lotus behind her directly pressed towards Nyetian. Nyetian suddenly raised his head, and a strange starry light gushed out from his eyes. Suddenly, a strong spiritual deterrent shot out. Ah! Eugene screamed, unable to bear the huge spiritual pressure, and directly fainted. Releasing absolute tremor at such a close distance, not to mention Eugene, this inexperienced little girl, even an extremely tough martial artist couldn't bear it. Nyetian had already deliberately restrained the power of absolute tremor, otherwise, the spiritual pressure just now was enough to make Eugene's divine sense collapse. Chapter 8:23. Nyetian sensed that someone was lurking in the void. With a deep roar, he stabbed out with his sword. Who's there? A terrifying sword essence bloomed in an instant. The sword radiance rushed to the sky and destroyed everything. Die! Almost at the same time, the figure moved as well. He smiled coldly, and a sickle that was several meters long appeared in his hand. He slashed through the void, and a beam of murderous light flashed out. A beam of black light whizzed out, releasing a strong aura of destruction. This beam of destructive light wasn't aimed at Nyetian, but at Eugene. Don't kill her! Nyetian's eyes trembled, and his pupils suddenly shrank. A layer of dark blue light flashed from his body and shot out, wrapping around Eugene's body. At the same time, Nyetian's heaven-shrouding totem suddenly expanded, enveloping Eugene. Boom! With a violent explosion, the black brilliance bombarded and landed directly on the heaven-shrouding totem. Suddenly, black gas filled the sky, as if to drown out the starlight of the heaven-shrouding totem. The strength of the lurker was very strong, beyond Nyetian's expectation. The power of this attack was very strong, and it was obvious that he wanted to kill with one blow. The heaven-shrouding totem was violently impacted and suddenly shook. Nyetian's body shook, and he suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood. But he did not care. A huge sword essence gushed out of his body, enveloping Eugene, and then shot out. On the ground, a figure rushed to the sky and protected Eugene. It was Yu Jiao. Nyetian saw that Eugene was safe and secretly breathed a sigh of relief. Just now, that person did not attack him, but attacked Eugene, which was greatly beyond his expectations. It seemed that this person wanted to frame him. You coward who hides in the shadows, get the hell out here! Nyetian stood in the void, his silver hair fluttering. With a deep roar, a mighty sword essence burst out and bombarded in a direction in the void. Huh! Sun Hai and the others on the ground saw this scene and were stunned. There was no one in the void at all. What was Nyetian doing? Just as everyone was stunned, a cold voice rang out. Young man, I didn't think you would be able to sense my existence. Interesting. A faint voice rang out, carrying with it a strong sense of mockery. Swoosh! A black beam of light shot out from the source of the sound. Boom! The black brilliance collided with the sword's shadow. An explosion resounded in the void as the two massive forces dispersed in the space. At this moment, a black-clothed figure appeared several hundred meters above Nietian. This figure was extremely thin, like a skeleton standing upright. However, this person's eyes were extremely terrifying. They were deep, dark, silent, and austere, like a bottomless abyss. The strangest thing was that this person was holding a black scythe that was several meters long. The scythe was releasing an extremely cold and gloomy aura, with a thick aura of death. Who are you? Why are you framing me? Nietian looked at the figure and asked cold. Just now, this person had hidden in the void and attacked Eugene. It was obvious that he wanted to frame Nietian. At the same time, Nietian's eyes trembled slightly. This person was very strong, with a cultivation of the third layer of the sky-human realm. The scythe in his hand was even more strange, with a kind of soul-stirring power. Young man, you're not too stupid. You can actually see that I'm framing you. The black-clothed martial artist said coldly. There was a slight smile at the corner of his mouth, but it gave people an even more gloomy feeling. After a pause, he frowned and continued, I'm very puzzled. If the saintess of the heavenly demon cult dies at your hands in the Black Moon Empire, will it cause the heavenly demon cult and the Black Moon Empire to fall out completely? Nietian went blank for a moment before he understood. Eugene's divine wind was the saintess of the heavenly demon cult. If she died at his hands in the Black Moon Empire, then the heavenly demon cult and the Black Moon Empire would definitely fall out completely. The two great forces would start an all-out war, and at that time, it was unknown how many people would die. This person had framed Nietian in order to make the heavenly demon cult and the Black Moon Empire start a war. His schemes were sinister and vicious. Who are you? What benefits do you have if the heavenly demon cult and the Black Moon Empire start a war? Nietian suppressed the anger in his heart and asked cold. This person seemed to have been hiding for a long time, waiting for that fatal blow. However, he failed. Nietian had used the heaven-shrouding totem to save Eugene's life. What benefits do I have? That person looked at Nietian with a strange expression. He sneered and said, You people are too worldly. You want benefits for everything you do. I don't want any benefits. I just want to see the two great forces start a war. Because I need more blood and death to nourish my ghost scythe. GGG. As that person's voice fell, the ghost scythe in his hand seemed to have come alive. It suddenly transformed into a ghost face and let out an ear-piercing laughter. This extremely strange scene made Nietian's eyes tremble violently. That ghost scythe was really strange. It seemed to have a life of its own. Nietian had never seen a spiritual weapon with a life of its own. Master, there are many souls sealed in his scythe. It seems to contain a terrifying totem. That is the power of the totem. Corpse Demon Monarch saw something and cautiously reminded Nietian. Sealed many souls. Nietian was shocked. His heart trembled slightly. No wonder he felt a sinister aura surging from that scythe. Who are you? Nietian became cold and asked again, Why are you lurking around me? The other party's concealment skills were very high. Even if Nietian had the eye of the stars, he could not detect his presence in time. Nietian had only seen this kind of concealment ability on one person, and that was the pavilion master of Ling Xiantian Pavilion, Yu Gui. Even Crow, who was by Xian Qiu's side, could not compare to this person. Who am I? That person was stunned for a moment, then immediately laughed wildly. I already know who I am. I only know that I am the ghost scythe. Pretending to be mysterious, Nie Tianling shouted. The other party would not find him for no reason. They must be here for some purpose. I remember now. At this moment there was a sudden scream from the ground. Nie Tian looked down and saw that it was Sun Hai. Sun Hai pointed at the figure in the air. He seemed excited and panicked and shouted loudly, You are the sword of soul slayer, Shao Wuqing. Sun Hai was shocked to the extreme. He did not expect that Shao Wuqing was actually still alive. Shao Wuqing? Nie Tian heard this name and his eyes narrowed slightly. Chapter 824. Vengeful Ghost. Nie Tian looked at Shao Wuqing and his eyes narrowed. Although he looked like a ghost, he was indeed a person. At this time, Shao Wuqing suddenly looked at Sun Hai and said coldly, "If I remember correctly, you are called Sun Hai, right?" Nie Tian was slightly stunned. Shao Wuqing knew Sun Hai. Could he be from Sky Sword Pavilion? Sun Hai took a step forward and his figure rose into the air. He stood beside Nie Tian and looked at Shao Wuqing with a complicated gaze. His expression became extremely ugly as he said solemnly, "Brother Shao, the Sky Sword Pavilion was in the wrong back then. I apologize to you on behalf of the Sky Sword Pavilion. I didn't expect you to still be alive. If the pavilion master knew about this, he would be very happy." Happy? Shao Wuqing smiled coldly. His eyes released a resolute anger. He said coldly, "If Lulingyun knew I was still alive, he would definitely want to kill me." Lulingyun was the name of the pavilion master of Sky Sword Pavilion. Sun Hai's expression became even more embarrassed. He said, "Brother Shao, what happened back then was just a misunderstanding. The pavilion master is very regretful now. That was the biggest mistake he had ever made in his life." Nie Tian couldn't hear clearly from the side, and his brows furrowed. "Misunderstanding?" Shao Wuqing roared like an angry beast. He shouted crazily, "That year, Lulingyun destroyed my Yuanling Yuan Meridian and expelled me from Sky Sword Pavilion. If that was the case, then forget it. Why did you still send people to kill me? Do you know that my wife was pregnant back then? She died in the hands of Sky Sword Pavilion. Now you are standing out and pretending to be a good person. Where were you when I was being hunted?" Shao Wuqing's expression became crazy and his face became distorted. "Hunted?" Sun Hai was stunned. He said solemnly, "Brother Shao, when you were expelled from Sky Sword Pavilion, the pavilion master even sent people to protect your family. How could he have hunted you?" Bullsh *T. Sun Hai roared and said furiously, "Lulingyun has a face of a beast's heart. I am his disciple. If he was half human, why would he send people to kill my wife and child?" This. Sun Hai stood rooted to the ground, unable to accept it. Looking at Shao Wuqing's state, he was definitely not lying. There must be some misunderstanding. "Mr. Sun, what's going on?" Nie Tian listened for a long time and gradually figured out what was going on. Shao Wuqing seemed to have done something wrong back then. Afterwards, the pavilion master of Heaven's Sword Pavilion crippled his Yuan Spirit Yuan Meridian and expelled him from Heaven's Sword Pavilion. After that, his wife and son were also killed. It was just that he didn't know what Shao Wuqing had done back then. Sun Hai sighed. After hesitating for a long time, he finally said, "Mr. Nie, in truth, you also know about this matter." "I know?" Nie Tian was stunned for a moment. He hadn't even been to the Sky Sword Pavilion, so how could he know about it? Sun Hai's eyes were solemn as he said, 20 years ago, one of the 3 holy artifacts of the Sky Sword Pavilion, the Nirvana Sacred Heart, was lost, shocking the entire Sky Sword Pavilion. At that time, the person responsible for protecting the Nirvana Sacred Heart was Shao Wuqing. Someone reported to the pavilion master that he saw Shao Wuqing stealing the Nirvana Sacred Heart. After the pavilion master knew about this, he was extremely furious. Although Shao Wuqing tried his best to explain, there were many people who saw him giving the Nirvana Sacred Heart to someone else. In order to appease the public, the pavilion master had no choice but to cripple Shao Wuqing's Yuan Spirit Yuan Meridian and expel him from Sky Sword Pavilion. However, after that, the pavilion master wanted to investigate this matter thoroughly. Those people who testified that Shao Wuqing had stolen the Nirvana Sacred Heart all died mysteriously. Only then did the pavilion master know that there was something fishy about this matter. Someone framed Xiao Wuqing. The pavilion master wanted to look for Xiao Wuqing again, but there was no news of the latter. Until today. After Sun Hai finished speaking, his expression became even more solemn. He looked at Xiao Wuqing and said, "Brother Xiao, the pavilion master really didn't know about this matter back then." When Ye Tian heard the whole story, his face also became gloomy. Xiao Wuqing was indeed very wronged. Not only was he wronged, but his wife and son also died tragically. This kind of thing, if placed in someone else's shoes, would be unacceptable. Now the matter was already clear. The person who stole the Nirvana Sacred Heart was not Xiao Wuqing, but the two Xuetu Supremes. However, the hatred in Xiao Wuqing's heart could never be dispelled. Back then, Xiao Wuqing was one of the 3 swords of Sky Sword Pavilion. He was known as the soul-killing sword, and Lu Lingyun was known as the sword genius of Sky Sword Pavilion for hundreds of years. Unfortunately, an unjust case had caused this sword Dao genius to end up like this. Brother Xiao, no matter what, the pavilion master is your teacher. Since you are still alive, you should at least meet him. Come back to Sky Sword Pavilion with me. Sun Hai looked at Xiao Wuqing and said sincerely. Xiao Wuqing's expression became extremely terrifying. He suppressed the terrifying anger in his heart and said coldly, "Sun Hai, I am still alive because I have a great hatred that I have yet to avenge. I won't kill you today, but I want you to help me pass a message to Lu Lingyun. Tell him that the wronged ghost is coming for his life." Brother Xiao, you. Sun Hai's expression became extremely ugly. He didn't know what to say. Nye Tian shook his head slightly and signaled Sun Hai to stop talking. The hatred in Xiao Wuqing's heart was too great. How could it be resolved with just a few words? If Nye Tian was in Lu Lingyun's position, he definitely wouldn't let it go. Not only would he kill Lu Lingyun, but he would also destroy the entire Sky Sword Pavilion. Xiao Wuqing, what happened back then has nothing to do with me. Why are you looking for me? Nye Tian looked at Xiao Wuqing and said coldly. Xiao Wuqing was a pitiful person. Nye Tian didn't want to kill him. Humph. Xiao Wuqing calmed down a lot. His eyes revealed a cold light. He waved the wronged ghost scythe in his hand and said, "Nye Tian, I think you still don't know my current identity. I am one of the 7 swords of Burial Soul of the Burial Blade Society. I am looking for you to kill you." The cold and calm voice sounded as if he was talking about an extremely ordinary matter. To Xiao Wuqing, killing people was the most common thing. He lived for the sake of killing people. "You are from the Burial Blade Society?" Sun Hai was stunned. He didn't expect Xiao Wuqing to actually join the Burial Blade Society. "Why? Can't I?" Xiao Wuqing looked at Sun Hai coldly and said, "Back then, when I was expelled from the Sky Sword Pavilion, my Yuan Spirit Yuan Meridian was destroyed. It was Lord Blade Chief who saved me. He reconstructed my Yuan Spirit Yuan Meridian and gave me a new lease of life. It is very reasonable for me to join the Burial Blade Society." Xiao Wuqing's Yuan Spirit Yuan Meridian was destroyed. 20 years later, he could still reach the 3rd layer of the Heaven Realm. The pain he endured was not something an ordinary person could imagine. To get to where he was today, he had sacrificed too much. "Nye Tian, you killed a member of my Burial Blade Society. Lord Blade Chief asked me to take your life. I don't think you have any objections, right?" Xiao Wuqing smiled coldly and pointed the wronged ghost scythe at Nye Tian. A cold smile hung on the corner of his mouth, revealing his killing intent. "You want to kill me?" Nye Tian smiled faintly and signaled Sun Hai to step back. At this moment, Xiao Wuqing had completely turned into a killing weapon. He only knew how to kill and nothing else. Chapter 825. Nye Tian looked at Xiao Wuqing with cold eyes. Although he knew that Xiao Wuqing was wronged, it had nothing to do with him. Now that Xiao Wuqing wanted to kill him, the two of them could only be enemies. Nye Tian signaled Sun Hai to step down. Xiao Wuqing was very strong, at the third level of the sky-human realm. Nie Tian had to go all out to have a chance of winning. Although Nie Tian had fought with Mo Biming, who was at the fifth level of the sky-human realm, it was only one move. If it was a life-and-death battle with Xiao Wuqing, he had no confidence. His opponent's ghost side was very strange, making even Nie Tian feel fear. "Mr. Nie, you have to be careful," Sun Hai reminded Nie Tian, then looked at Xiao Wuqing deeply, sighed, and left. 20 years ago, Xiao Wuqing was praised by Lu Lingyun as a sword genius of Sky Sword Pavilion. One could imagine how terrifying his talent was. Back then, Xiao Wuqing's soul-killing sword had suppressed many geniuses of Sky Sword Pavilion and was known as one of the 3 swords of Sky Sword Pavilion. However, his Yuan Spirit Yuan Meridian was destroyed, and it was no longer the soul-killing sword. Even his Yuan Spirit had been remolded into the Ghost Scythe. The head of the Burial Blade Society had made Xiao Wuqing into a completely different person. This person's methods were strange and unpredictable. "Nie Tian, you killed Ling Shui and Ling Ye. Your strength is not bad. However, when you meet the Ghost Scythe, you can only accept your death." Xiao Wuqing looked at Nie Tian with a playful expression. It seemed that he did not see Nie Tian as an opponent, but as prey. "Is that so?" Nie Tianling smiled indifferently. His eyes were as resolute as ever. Even if Xiao Wuqing was very strong, he was not afraid. Since the opponent wanted to fight, then he would fight. "Very well." Xiao Wuqing's eyes were like poison. With a playful smile, he said, "A prey that knows how to fight back is interesting." As he spoke, Xiao Wuqing released a cold killing intent from his body. Immediately after, his ghost scythe slashed across the sky, and a terrifying black light bloomed crazily. The surrounding space was filled with a rain of blood and stench of blood. Nie Tian's eyes narrowed slightly. He saw that in the space there was really rain falling. Moreover, it was a crimson rain of blood. Drops of blood danced in the air like a flowing river of blood. It surrounded Xiao Wuqing, making him look even more eerie and eerie. Such a terrifying aura! When the people on the ground saw this scene, their hearts trembled. Xiao Wuqing's aura was gloomy and cold, causing the whole area to darken. A huge resentment pervaded the void, as if it wanted to devour everything. Xiao Wuqing stood in the rain of blood, holding the vengeful ghost scythe, like a vengeful ghost. Nie Tian could not help but frown when he sensed the terrifying smell of blood. "Nie Tian, prepare to die." Xiao Wuqing's cold eyes locked onto Nie Tian. Amidst the rain of blood that filled the sky, a ball of black light blossomed and condensed into a ghostly claw in the air, pouncing towards Nie Tian. Xiao Wuqing didn't intend to give Nie Tian any chance to retaliate. In his opinion, Nie Tian was too weak and wasn't a match for him. Nie Tian stared at the ghostly claw in the air. He could feel that it contained an extremely terrifying and violent killing intent. It was extremely frightening. "Hoo!" After letting out a long breath, the 9 dragon veins in Nie Tian's body started to revolve at a crazy speed. Waves of violent lightning energy surged out of his body, instantly weakening the dark aura around him a little. The power of lightning surged wildly in the sky, causing crackling sounds to erupt in the space. The space itself was disturbed by this terrifying power, becoming shaky and on the verge of collapse. In the blink of an eye, the sea of lightning appeared again. The endless lightning power was abnormally violent, and a thunder dragon slowly condensed and formed. This time, Nie Tian released all the lightning power in his body, condensing into a thunder dragon that was nearly 1,000 meters long. It was mighty and vigorous, shaking the heavens and the earth. What a violent power! The crowd's hearts trembled slightly. The power that Nie Tian displayed was beyond their expectations. The mighty lightning power seemed to be able to tear the heavens and the earth apart. Roar! The thunder dragon tumbled in the air, roaring angrily. The dragon's roar shook the heavens, and a terrifying dragon aura spread out, causing the surrounding dark aura to retreat bit by bit. Xiao Wuqing stared blankly at the thunderbolt dragon in the void for a moment. Then, the corners of his mouth curled into an evil smile. He said coldly, "Nie Tian, this is your strongest power, right? Then let me destroy it completely." As his cold voice fell, an even more terrifying dark light was released. It drew a dark trajectory in the air, and pressed down on Nie Tian crazily. Nie Tian stood on the thunder dragon, his eyes as firm as usual. Boom! The next moment the thunder dragon whizzed out. Its huge body was unbelievably fast, and it rushed towards Xiao Wuqing. Die! Xiao Wuqing seemed to have gone mad. He roared angrily, and a terrifying dark power surged around him. The dark aura in the air became thicker. Boom! In the next moment, in the dark air, two forces collided, and a dull and loud sound was heard. The terrifying power spread in all directions, as if the entire sky was about to be torn apart and devoured. The strange dark power and the dazzling lightning power engulfed each other in the air. Endless power raged in the air. The surrounding space of 10,000 meters was shrouded in darkness. From time to time, purplish golden lightning power surged out. The figures of Nie Tian and Xiao Wuqing were both shrouded in darkness. The crowd below was dumbfounded. No one had expected that the first confrontation between the two would be so tragic. But on the surface, Nie Tian seemed to have lost. The dark power had the absolute upper hand, shrouding the entire space. Chi chi chi. A strange sound came from the space, as if the space was being torn apart inch by inch. A terrifying and crazy power continuously surged out from the darkness. The dark power and the thunder dragon were too terrifying. They couldn't destroy each other in an instant. They could only slowly engulf and tear each other apart. After a while, a figure rushed out from the endless darkness. He was bathed in the sea of lightning, like the god of thunder. Nie Tian. The crowd couldn't help but exclaim when they saw the figure. Nie Tian didn't lose, and he rushed out from the darkness. On the other side, the darkness gathered behind Xiao Wuqing in an instant, drowning him in the rain of blood behind him. Xiao Wuqing stood in the rain of blood. Although he had a smile on his face, he couldn't hide his shock. The dark light flowed around his body, making him look very demonic. Nie Tian, I didn't expect you to be so strong. I have to say, you have amazed me. Xiao Wuqing's cold eyes locked onto Nie Tian. The shock in his heart made his body tremble. In the collision just now, Xiao Wuqing never expected that Nie Tian didn't die. He wasn't even injured. The power of lightning was too terrifying. It could actually resist the power of his hell blood rain. Chapter 8:26. Xiao Wuqing could not imagine that a heavenly evolution level 5 martial artist could withstand the darkness of the hell blood rain and even force it back. Nie Tian's strength had indeed amazed him. Nie Tian stood in the void. The dark light shone on his face. Coupled with his long silver hair, he looked very demonic. The power of darkness is indeed very strange. If not for my power of lightning suppressing all darkness-type powers, I would not have been able to resist the invasion of the darkness. Nie Tian thought to himself as a look of surprise flashed across his face. When he was in the darkness just now, Nie Tian felt that the power of darkness wanted to seep into his body, as though it wanted to pull his soul out. That power of darkness actually contained the power to devour souls. If not for the power of lightning in Nie Tian's body, his soul would have been pulled out by the power of darkness. Such power was too terrifying and chilling. In the void, Nie Tian and Xiao Wuqing faced each other. Both sides wanted to destroy the other. Today's battle was already a battle to the death. Master, the source of his power is that scythe. Corpse Lord's voice rang out, reminding Nie Tian to pay attention to the ghost scythe in Xiao Wuqing's hand. Nie Tian nodded. He had also noticed that Xiao Wuqing's ghost scythe was filled with resentment. There were countless vengeful spirits sealed in it. Moreover, it also contained some kind of terrifying totem power. It was very frightening. "Nye Tian, your talent is amazing, but Lord Saber Chief has ordered that your head must be taken. I am only following orders. Don't blame me if you die in my hands." The corner of Xiao Wuqing's mouth trembled. His cold voice was filled with strong confidence. He seemed to be very confident that he could definitely kill Nye Tian. "Make your move." Nye Tian smiled faintly, his eyes releasing overbearing confidence. This was a world where strength was respected. Be it Xiao Wuqing or Nye Tian, they could not escape the restrictions of this rule. Just think about it, if Xiao Wuqing was strong enough back then, would he have allowed Lulingyun to cripple his Yuan spirit Yuan meridian? The current Nye Tian was the same. If he was a pinnacle expert, Xiao Wuqing probably wouldn't even dare to approach him. Strength always represented the greatest right to speak. Without strength, all words were meaningless. Xiao Wuqing looked at Nye Tian cold. The sickle of vengeance in his hand spun once again. Immediately, the blood rain around him became denser. The blood rain was like a blood-colored snake, slowly wriggling. The blood-colored snake surged under Xiao Wuqing's feet, drawing blood-colored runes. It was extremely terrifying. Slowly, more and more blood-colored snakes appeared, and a 100-meter-wide blood-colored totem appeared beneath Xiao Wuqing's feet. The totem slowly revolved, and blood-colored runes appeared in the air, transforming into an incomparably bloody power. Immediately, an earth-shattering stench of blood filled the air, spreading to a distance of 10,000 meters. How terrifying! The crowd on the ground felt the stench of blood, and their faces turned pale. It was as though there were blood-colored tentacles surging around their bodies, trying to seize the souls in their bodies. Nye Tian was the closest to Xiao Wuqing, only about 1,000 meters away, so he could feel the stench of blood more clearly. He felt as though there were thousands of insects biting his body, rapidly devouring his body and soul. Nye Tian saw terrifying images flowing around Xiao Wuqing, like a scene on a map, where countless people were enduring torture. Ear-piercing screams filled the air, disrupting Nye Tian's state of mind. His eyes flickered slightly, but he immediately regained his calmness. Huh! When Xiao Wuqing saw this scene, he couldn't help but frown. He then laughed coldly and said, "You're actually not affected by the Hell Totem. Your temperament is far stronger than ordinary warriors. I really can't bear to kill you." Hell Totem. When Nye Tian heard Xiao Wuqing say this name, he couldn't help but frown. He knew that this totem came from the scythe of wronged ghosts. The more souls sealed in the scythe, the stronger the power of the Hell Totem. Nye Tian, prepare to die. Your soul will make my Hell Totem even more powerful. Xiao Wuqing took a step in the air, and the blood-colored totem under his feet immediately activated. The terrifying blood rain thickened, and Xiao Wuqing seemed to be bathed in fresh blood. The Hell Totem required the nourishment of fresh blood and death. As long as there was enough fresh blood and death, the Hell Totem would be able to erupt with unimaginable power. Nye Tian looked at the sticky blood rain, and felt a suffocating pressure. His breathing became rapid. "Why? I haven't even made a move, and you can't take it?" Xiao Wuqing smiled cold, and the scythe of wronged ghosts in his hands suddenly rose, and then slashed across the air. A dark brilliance streaked across the dark space, and a black mark was formed, and it blasted towards Nye Tian. Heaven-shrouding totem, activate! Nye Tian roared, and the domain origin array in his body began to operate crazily. Endless power of the stars gushed out, and suddenly, his body shone with starlight, as if there was a river of stars revolving around him. Seeing this, Xiao Wuqing was slightly stunned, and then smiled. "I didn't expect you to have a trump card. It was this totem that saved the life of the Sky Demon Saintess, right?" The corner of Xiao Wuqing's mouth curled into a cold smile, and his determination to kill Nye Tian became even more determined. He could feel that the totem around Nye Tian was very terrifying. If he could obtain Nye Tian's power, his Hell Totem would definitely have a qualitative improvement, and his strength would also increase greatly. Only with sufficient strength Could he have the ability to seek revenge on the Sky Sword Pavilion? Boom! The power of darkness bombarded the heaven-shrouding totem, and the air trembled violently. Then, the power of darkness actually merged with the totem, and turned into a dark light, surging in the starlight. And in the blink of an eye, the dark light was swallowed by the starlight. The heaven-shrouding totem had the power to devour the heavens, and even the hell totem couldn't shake this power. Xiao Wuqing was stunned at first, and then he smiled sinisterly. This is really getting more and more interesting. The stronger the power displayed by the heaven-shrouding totem, the more excited Xiao Wuqing felt. I want to see whether your totem is stronger, or my hell totem is stronger. The corner of Xiao Wuqing's mouth curled into a sinister smile, and the hell totem under his feet revolved crazily. Lumps of blood-colored rivers surged, and a terrifying bloody aura permeated the entire space. The space seemed to be covered with a layer of glaring blood-colored curtain, and it was extremely gloomy and cold. Nie Tian looked at Xiao Wuqing, and his eyes were filled with palpitating determination. His entire body surged with a majestic sword intent, and a clear sword cry resounded in the air. Xiao Wuqing's strength was too strong, and he wasn't any weaker than Mo Biming. If Nie Tian continued to wail like this, his origin power would be completely depleted. Chapter 8:27. Xiao Wuqing saw that Nie Tian's expression was terrifyingly calm, and even he felt a chill down his spine. Nie Tian, do you still want to struggle? Xiao Wuqing smiled Nie Tian, and his eyes were filled with mockery. Nie Tian's expression was cold, and he didn't speak. He knew that the more Xiao Wuqing mocked him, the more agitated he was. Die! Xiao Wuqing saw that Nie Tian didn't speak, and he couldn't help but fly into a rage. With a roar, he swung his scythe, and an even more terrifying black light whizzed out, turning into a black ghostly claw in the air, and pressed down. Nie Tian stood in the void as if he didn't care at all. Boom! An explosion sounded, and the totem shook violently. Nie Tian's body swayed, and he spat out a mouthful of blood. But he still stood in the air, and his eyes were so firm that it made people's hearts palpitate. You're courting death. Seeing that Nie Tian didn't dodge, Xiao Wuqing felt humiliated. His figure flashed, and he took a step forward, waved his scythe, and attacked Nie Tian. But what was surprising was that Nie Tian still didn't dodge, and he stood there steadily, completely ignoring Xiao Wuqing's attack, and even closed his eyes. What is Nie Tian doing? The crowd saw this scene, and their hearts trembled. Xiao Wuqing was madly attacking, but Nie Tian didn't move at all. Was he crazy? Xiao Wuqing's attack was very strong, and a dark red rain of blood condensed on the scythe. It was incomparably thick, and it released a violent and bloody aura. This was the hell blood rain condensed by the hell totem. If Nie Tian was hit by the blood rain, not only would his body be blasted into pieces, but even his soul would be taken away in an instant. The power of the hell totem was beyond Nie Tian's imagination. This attack was Xiao Wuqing's true strength, and it was a one-hit kill. In the void, Xiao Wuqing stepped on the hell totem and came over. His entire body was covered in sticky blood rain. His figure was like a blood-red curtain, tearing the heavens and the earth apart, covering the heavens and the earth with the smell of blood. Chi chi chi. A horrible sound came from the space. The space was torn by the blood-red curtain piece by piece, and the endless bloody air covered the whole sky. The space within 10,000 meters became dark. The eyes of the crowd trembled violently. It seemed that this time Nie Tian was really finished. Under countless gazes, the blood-red curtain suddenly pressed down on Nie Tian, getting closer and closer, more and more urgent. 100 meters. 50 meters. 10 meters. Just as the blood-red curtain was about to touch Nie Tian, his eyes suddenly opened, and the corners of his mouth curled into a cold, mocking smile. Die. At this moment, Xiao Wuqing no longer cared about anything else. With a crazy roar, the hell totem under his feet directly pressed forward. He wanted to use the Hell Totem to devour Nietian. Absolute tremor. The corners of Nietian's mouth slowly moved, and a terrible starlight suddenly gushed out from his eyes. Suddenly, an invisible spiritual deterrent rushed towards Xiao Wuqing. Spiritual attack. Xiao Wuqing suddenly felt a spiritual wave pressing down on him from the void. His heart suddenly trembled, and he wanted to resist, but it was too late. His soul trembled violently, and his eyes suddenly became dull. Nietian did not dodge, because he wanted to lure Xiao Wuqing to attack. He had long seen that Xiao Wuqing was an extremely tenacious person. More than 20 years ago, he suffered a great injustice, and his Yuan meridian was destroyed. Yet, he was still able to walk to this day and achieve the strength he had today. One could imagine how terrifying his mind was. Nietian only had one chance to release absolute tremor. If he failed, he would not have another chance. To severely injure Xiao Wuqing, he had to create the best opportunity. Xiao Wuqing's Hell Totem had the power to devour souls. Of course, he would not kill Nietian directly. He would definitely want to obtain Nietian's soul. Unfortunately, in this way, he would fall into Nietian's trap. Nietian and Xiao Wuqing were less than 10 meters apart. Absolute tremor at such a close distance, even Xiao Wuqing would not be able to withstand it. Xiao Wuqing's soul suffered a spiritual attack, and his divine sense fluctuated violently. His whole body suddenly became dazed, and his eyes became dull. This is the time. Soul-severing sky seal, open! Nietian said in his heart. His hands formed a seal, and suddenly, a vast and boundless power appeared behind him. Countless golden lights surged, and the golden light flickered with a terrible killing intent. Nietian lured Xiao Wuqing into close combat, then used absolute tremor to control him, and finally used soul-severing sky seal to kill him. This was his battle strategy. Everything was going according to his plan. The soul-severing sky light of soul-severing sky seal shone down, and Nietian was shrouded in the golden light, like a god descending to the world. Heavenly light shone, annihilating everything. A hint of killing intent appeared in the corner of Nietian's eyes, and endless golden light blasted towards Xiao Wuqing. However, at the moment when the soul-severing skylight was about to kill Xiao Wuqing, a sudden change occurred. "Whoa!" The ghost scythe in Xiao Wuqing's hand suddenly trembled, and suddenly, a black skull surged out, letting out an ear-piercing scream. The next moment, Nietian actually felt thousands of ghosts wailing in his ears. His divine sense suddenly became dazed, and his mind trembled. His whole body suddenly became dizzy. All of a sudden, Nietian felt as if an invisible hand had reached into his body and was trying to pluck his soul from his body. The black skull surged out from the ghost scythe, turned into a dark brilliance, and enveloped Nietian, wanting to enter his body and devour everything about him. "Master!" At this moment, a scream rang out, and the corpse demon king's figure appeared. Black spirit devouring force surged out from his body, resisting the invasion of the dark brilliance. Nietian also woke up at this moment. His body shook, and endless sword will surged out. Ah! The dark force surrounding Nietian was bombarded by the sword will, and immediately retreated. The black skull appeared again, and the aura of darkness weakened a little. With a horrifying scream, it immediately sank into the ghost scythe. Nietian frowned slightly and completely woke up. In that instant, he actually suffered a mental attack, causing him to lose control of his mind. He never expected that the ghost scythe could also release a mental attack, and it wasn't any weaker than his absolute tremor. If Corpse Demon King didn't wake Nietian up in time, his soul would have been taken away by the ghost scythe. Almost at the same time, Xiao Wuqing also woke up. Seeing Nietian in front of him, his eyes narrowed, and he couldn't hide the shock in his heart. "Leave!" At this moment, a voice came from the ghost scythe. It was very ear-piercing, like the hoarse voice of a child. Xiao Wuqing's figure moved, and directly retreated a few thousand meters away. He looked at Nie Tian unwillingly and said cold, Nie Tian, we will meet again. After that, Xiao Wuqing's figure flashed, and directly disappeared into the void. Hu! Nie Tian looked at the direction where Xiao Wuqing disappeared, and let out a long breath. He looked exhausted, and his face was as pale as paper. Chapter 828. Looking in the direction where Xiao Wuqing disappeared, Nie Tian slowly regained his composure after a long time. The scythe of the wronged ghost was too strange, especially the black skull that appeared. It was extremely terrifying and could actually release a spiritual attack. Fortunately, Nie Tian had a tough mind. Otherwise, his divine sense would have collapsed by now. The scythe of the wronged ghost was definitely not Xiao Wuqing's original spirit. It seemed that the scythe itself had a consciousness and a powerful soul resided in it. This was very similar to the remnant soul in Yu Jin's bloodline power, the blood jade demonic lotus. Nie Tian encountered two things that he could not understand in one day. One could imagine the shock in his heart. Nie Tian, are you all right? At this moment, a voice suddenly sounded in the void and a figure appeared. It's you. When Nie Tian saw the face, he was slightly stunned. It turned out to be the ancestor of the Xian family, Xian Yi. He did not expect that the latter would appear here. I'm looking for the saintess of the heavenly demon cult. Xian Yi saw that although Nie Tian was pale, he was not injured. He felt relieved and directly stated his purpose. Nie Tian smiled bitterly. If Xian Yi had come earlier, he would not have had to fight to the death with Xiao Wuqing. The two figures landed in the Jade Mansion. Eugene was in Yu Jiao's arms, still unconscious and had not woken up. After Xian Yi confirmed that Eugene was fine, he relaxed a lot. Nie Tian, I have something to tell you. Xian Yi did not beat around the bush and directly said to Nie Tian. Nie Tian nodded slightly and went to a remote courtyard in the Jade Mansion with Xian Yi. Mr. Xian, if you have something to say, please say it. Nie Tian did not beat around the bush and directly said. Nie Tian, you have already seen the saintess of the heavenly demon cult. Xian Yi looked at Nie Tian with a somewhat grim expression as he said, she and another disciple of the heavenly demon sect will participate in the wind and cloud duel with you this time. I want you to ensure her safety and make sure she obtains the legacy. Nie Tian narrowed his eyes and could not help but feel a little puzzled. The Dark Moon Empire and the heavenly demon cult were enemies, so why would Xian Yi help the heavenly demon cult's holy maiden? Moreover, Xian Yi seemed to be very concerned about Eugeni's safety. Could Xian Yi have reached some sort of agreement with the heavenly demon cult? Nie Tian guessed. He then glanced at Xian Yi and asked, what about His Highness Xian Qiu? Xian Yi had asked Nie Tian to protect Eugene and help her obtain the inheritance. These things were supposed to happen to Xian Qiu. Now that Eugene had appeared, what should Xian Qiu do? If Xian Yi asked Nie Tian to protect Eugene and Xian Qiu at the same time, then it would be asking too much. Xian Qiu, you don't have to worry about it. Xian Yi paused for a moment before giving Nie Tian an unexpected answer. Nie Tian's eyes flickered as he looked at Xian Yi in confusion. Xian Qiu was a direct descendant of Xian Yi, while Eugene was a member of the Yu family. Why would Xian Yi give up on Xian Qiu for Eugene? Mr. Xian, you are a smart person. There are some things I shouldn't have said. Nie Tian thought for a moment, then said, but as a collaborator, I still have to advise you not to trust the promises of your enemies. I've heard a little about the matter between the Xian and Yu families, and it's definitely not something that can be resolved with some small benefit. Nie Tian guessed that Xian Yi had already paid a visit to the heavenly demon cult master, and the two of them had most likely reached some sort of agreement. Xian Yi would ensure that Eugene entered the wind and cloud arts and successfully obtained the inheritance, while the heavenly demon cult would give up something. However, the Yu family had been exterminated by the Xian family back then, so there was no way they wouldn't take revenge. If Xianyi thought that the heavenly demon cult master would give up on revenge by giving them some benefits, then he was too naive. However, given Xianye's shrewdness, he would not believe such nonsense. That was why Nie Tian was very curious as to what kind of agreement Xianyi and Yu Rushuang had reached. Of course, Nie Tian knew that the Black Moon Imperial family and the Heavenly Demon Cult were not good people. However, Mo Biming of the Heavenly Demon Cult had opened a place like the Blood Death Ground, so Nie Tian did not have a good impression of the Heavenly Demon Cult. If the two sides went to war, Nie Tian was inclined to stand on the side of the Black Moon Empire. I know, Xianyi said solemnly. Xianyi said in a deep voice. The seriousness on his face deepened, and he seemed to have aged several decades in an instant. In that instant, Nie Tian felt Xianye's primordial spirit tremble strangely, as if it had become extremely unstable. He frowned, and his expression changed slightly as if he had understood something. Nie Tian's consciousness swept over Xianye's body and found that the latter's primordial spirit was unstable, and his blood qi was weakening. This was a sign that his lifespan was approaching its end. Xianye's days were numbered. After confirming this, Nie Tian's expression suddenly changed. This was something he had not expected. Xianye's age should be around 500 to 600 years old. With his 7th level heaven human strength, his maximum lifespan should be between 800 to 100 years old. However, the so-called maximum lifespan referred to the time when a martial artist's martial body did not suffer any damage. But any martial artist's martial body would more or less be damaged. Because any martial artist with some strength would have experienced countless battles in their lifetime, even life and death battles. Generally speaking, those who could live to a natural time were all alchemists and blacksmiths, because these people basically did not know how to fight. However, their strength usually would not be too high. Martial artists who cultivated both alchemy and martial arts were not many after all. Xianyi living to 500 to 600 years old was pretty much the limit of his lifespan. You can tell. Xianyi saw Nie Tian's reaction and guessed that the latter already knew, so he did not hide it anymore. He smiled calmly and said, "The path of martial artists is to defy the heavens. Ordinary people can at most live to 100 years old. I can live to 600 years old, so I already have no regrets in this life." Seeing that Xianyi was so open-minded, Nie Tian smiled faintly. At this moment Xianyi sighed and said, "It's just that there are some things that I have to resolve before I die. If I don't resolve them, the Black Moon Empire will face a disaster." Nie Tian nodded solemnly. Of course, he understood what Xianyi meant. The disaster he was referring to was the Heavenly Demon Cult. Yu Rushuang and the Black Moon Empire had an irreconcilable feud. The Heavenly Demon Cult had not dared to make a move for so many years because they were afraid of Xianyi. If Xianyi died, the Heavenly Demon Cult would definitely start a war with the Black Moon Empire. At that time, even if Yu Rushuang did not make a move, her 2 deputies and 4 kings would be able to destroy the Black Moon Empire in an instant. At this moment, Nie Tian finally understood why Xianyi had let Nie Tian live even though he knew that he had framed Xian Shao. It was probably for this moment. He seemed to want to use Nie Tian to do something. "Nie Tian, I want to make a deal with you." At this moment, Xianyi suddenly became serious, and a sharp look appeared in his aged eyes. "A deal?" Nie Tian was slightly taken aback, and his expression became cautious. He did not want to take advantage of others, and he did not want to become a tool for others to use. Xianyi glanced at Nie Tian and suddenly took out a map, placing it in front of Nie Tian. Chapter 829. Nie Tian's expression slowly changed as he looked at the Mystic Moon map in front of him. The Mystic Moon Empire was extremely vast, spanning thousands of miles. It was surrounded by powerful forces. On one side was Sky Sword Pavilion, and on the other side was Mu Yi Empire. What surprised Nie Tian was that Sky Sword Pavilion was very small, not even 1/10 the size of the mystic Moon Empire. However, this was not what surprised Nietian. What interested him was that the mystic Moon Empire was divided into 3 parts on the map, and these 3 parts were labeled Heavenly Demon Cult, Nietian, Mystic Moon Empire. That's right, Nietian's name was on the map, and it was sandwiched between the Heavenly Demon Cult and the Mystic Moon Empire. Mr. Xian, you want to divide the Mystic Moon Empire into 3 parts, and the Mystic Moon Empire only wants the smallest part. Nietian was not a fool, and he immediately understood Xian Ye's intention. He did not expect that he was so important in Xian Ye's heart that he occupied almost half of the Mystic Moon Empire. Yes. Xian Yi nodded and said, I don't have much time left. This is the only way. Nietian's expression became complicated. Xian Yi wanted to sacrifice the Mystic Moon Empire to protect the Xian family's bloodline. This move was too vicious. Xian Yi knew that if he did not make a sacrifice, the Heavenly Demon Cult would not stop. Once the Heavenly Demon Cult took over the Mystic Moon Empire, the Xian family would end up like the Yu family back then, annihilated. Therefore, he gave 1/3 of the Mystic Moon Empire to the Heavenly Demon Cult, half to Nietian, and the Xian family only kept the smallest part of the Mystic Moon Empire. The most ingenious part of the whole plan was that Xian Yi gave almost half of the Mystic Moon Empire to Nietian, and made Nietian be sandwiched between the Heavenly Demon Cult and the Mystic Moon Empire. It had to be said that this was a good plan. On one hand, it could temporarily appease the Heavenly Demon Cult's anger, and on the other hand, it could make Nietian a natural barrier for the Xian family, blocking the Heavenly Demon Cult's invasion. Moreover, Xian Yi purposely gave half of the Mystic Moon Empire to Nietian to divert the Heavenly Demon Cult's hatred on Nietian. The Heavenly Demon Cult had been working hard for hundreds of years, and now that Xian Yi was about their revenge was about Xian Yi was about dying, Nietian suddenly, and took away half of the moon. How could they not be angry? The simple division of the map and the simple compromise plan were enough to show profound knight's shrewdness. Even Nietian felt a chill run down his spine. Seeing that Nietian seemed to be hesitating, Xian Ye's eyes flickered, and he asked with an expectant expression, What do you think, Nietian? The corner of Nietian's mouth curled up into a strange smile, but he did not answer Xian Yi directly. Instead, he asked, Mr. Xian, what makes you think I can fight against the Sky Demon Cult? I'm just a Heaven Evolution Realm martial artist. How am I supposed to fight the powerful Sky Demon Cult alone? The Heavenly Demon Cult was so powerful that even Xian Yi could not defeat them. Yet, he wanted Nietian to be the Mystic Moon Empire's barrier. Was this a joke? Even if Nietian's power was mysterious, it was still limited. It was not an exaggeration to say that if Xian Yi attacked Nietian now, Nietian would most likely die in his hands. Xian Ye's eyes were burning. Nietian, you might not be able to defeat the Heavenly Demon Cult, but the force behind you can. You are from the Myriad Demons' Dragon Abyss. Hasn't the Myriad Demons' Dragon Abyss always wanted to invade the Holy Light region? Do you think the Myriad Demons' Dragon Abyss will reject me if I give you half of the moon? The Myriad Demons' Dragon Abyss. Nietian's eyes trembled. He had forgotten that he used the Spirit Dragon Ring when he fought with Mo Baiming. That was why Xian Yi and the others thought that he was from the Myriad Demons' Dragon Abyss. However, the truth was that Nietian was not from the Myriad Demons' Dragon Abyss. With Nietian's current strength, even if Xian Yi gave him half of the moon, he would not be able to keep it. Mr. Xian, I would like to know how much time you have left. Nietian thought for a moment and suddenly asked. With Xian Ye's strength, he could basically confirm that he had at most 3 days before the end of his life. Xian Yi was stunned. He did not know what Nietian was thinking. How much time he had left until the end of his life was his last secret, and he could not reveal it casually. I will give you an answer after the wind and cloud trial. What do you think? Nietian said when he saw that Xian Yi did not speak. Nie Tian was indeed tempted by half of the moon. However, his current strength was limited. He could not swallow half of the moon. After the wind and cloud trial, if his strength could reach the celestial being realm, he would have the confidence to fight against the heavenly demon cult. Before he had the strength, he could not promise Xianyi. All right. Xianyi looked at Nie Tian and nodded. Although he was not far from the end of his life, he still had a few months. Nie Tian, don't tell anyone about what happened today. Only you and I can know about this. No one else can know. Xianyi put away the map and handed it to Nie Tian. Of course. Nie Tian took the map and smiled. He was not a fool. How could he tell others about this? Mr. Xian, I have something to ask you. Nie Tian suddenly thought of something and asked, do you know about the Yu family's bloodline power? Blood Jade Demonic Lotus. Xianyi was slightly stunned. He said, the Blood Jade Demonic Lotus is a bloodline power that is not weaker than the Blood Jade Mystical Sand. Back then, the ancestors of the Xian family and the Yu family obtained these two powers in a forbidden land. Why are you suddenly concerned about the Yu family's bloodline power? Is there any difference between the Blood Jade Demonic Lotus and ordinary bloodline power? Nie Tian continued to ask. Different? Xianyi was stunned. He didn't know what Nie Tian meant. It seems you don't know either. Nie Tian shook his head. It's fine. Thank you for telling me. Xianyi looked puzzled. He didn't say anything else and left. He didn't take Eugene with him. Instead, he left her in his jade mansion. She was going to participate in the wind and cloud trials with Nie Tian. Nie Tian shook his head. He didn't know what kind of agreement Xianyi and Yu Rushuang had reached to force the Empyrean Demon Saintess to participate in the wind and cloud trials, even at the expense of Xianqiu. If Xianqiu knew about this, what would he think? After Xianyi left, Nie Tian went to check on the spirit gathering formation. Only after confirming that it hadn't been destroyed did he feel relieved. Mr. Nie. Sun Hai walked over with a flustered expression. I have to go back to Sky Sword Pavilion. Lushan doesn't want to go back. Please take care of her. Okay. Nie Tian replied and nodded. He knew why Sun Hai wanted to go back. Xiao Wuqing was still alive, and his strength had become so strange. Sun Hai had to go back and inform the people of Sky Sword Pavilion. Nie Tian told Yu Jiao to take care of Lushan, Eugene, and the others. Then he returned to his room. After the battle with Xiao Wuqing, Nie Tian's origin energy was exhausted and his mind was exhausted. This time, he would need to rest for a few days to recover. In the room, Nie Tian sat cross-legged and quickly entered a state of cultivation. He was still too weak. He had to improve his strength as soon as possible. Chapter 830. 10 days later, in the small courtyard of the Jade Mansion. The aura of the spiritual array has weakened. There isn't much effect even if I continue to cultivate, Nie Tian said plainly as he stood in front of the spiritual array. At this moment Yu Jiao, Lushan, and Eugene stood beside him. The three girls were each prettier than the other, and their statuses were each higher than the other. For the past 10 days, Nie Tian had been cultivating hard. His strength was still at the 5th level of heavenly evolution, but his physical condition had recovered to its peak. His entire body was like a sharp sword, revealing its edge. Eugene looked at Nie Tian from the side, her eyes flickering with unwillingness. She did not know what had happened during the battle with Nie Tian that day, and she had fainted. When she woke up, Yu Jiao and the others told her what had happened and even told her that Nie Tian was her savior. Yu Jiao, Lushan, and Eugene were of similar age, and their strength was similar as well. They got along very well. What surprised Nie Tian the most was that the three girls were sisters of the opposite sex. One was the eldest daughter of one of the 4 great families of the Dark Moon Empire, one was the daughter of the Sky Sword Pavilion's Pavilion Master, and one was the saintess of the Heavenly Demon Cult. The identities of these 3 people were on completely different levels. Big sister, did he really save me? Eugene pouted and looked at Nie Tian unwillingly as she asked Yu Jiao. Yes. Yu Jiao nodded with a somewhat helpless expression. Among the three, Yu Jiao was the eldest sister, Lu Shan was the second sister, and Eugene was the third sister. Even if he saved me, it doesn't change anything. He is still the enemy of our heavenly demon cult. Eugene looked at Nie Tian angrily and said fiercely. Nie Tian shook his head slightly and ignored her. A rank 7 spiritual array scroll appeared in Nie Tian's hand. He opened it and stored the spiritual array inside. The powerful aura of the array immediately disappeared. The three people in the array opened their eyes at the same time and stood up. After a month of hard cultivation, Jean de Bao, Han Tian, and Xian Miao seemed to have experienced a rebirth. The strength of the three of them had increased, especially Xian Miao. Her improvement was the most obvious. She had advanced from the first level of heavenly evolution to the 6th level of heavenly evolution. She had advanced by 5 levels. More importantly, her spiritual force increased from 27 levels to 40 levels, 5 levels higher than the 35 levels Nie Tian previously expected. Han Tian's strength had also risen from the first level of heavenly evolution to the 5th level of heavenly evolution. He seemed to have become much taller. He stood there like an iron tower. On the other hand, Jean de Bao had advanced from the first tier of the divine wheel to the 6th tier. His mental energy had also increased by more than 10 tiers. Boss, my abilities have increased to the 6th tier of the divine wheel. Jean de Bao was the first to walk over. His chubby face trembled with excitement as he laughed out loud. Nie Tian was slightly speechless. Among the three of them, Jean de Bao had improved the least. Nie Tian had originally thought that Jean de Bao would be able to improve to the 9th tier of the divine wheel. He did not expect Jean de Bao to only improve to the 6th tier of the divine wheel. In the end, this fellow was the most excited. Teacher! At this moment, Han Tian also walked over. He could not hide the excitement on his face. At this moment, Yu Jiao and the other two walked over. Lu Shan suddenly giggled and called out to Han Tian, "Hello, brother-in-law." Brother-in-law? Han Tian was stunned. He stared at the young girl in front of him, but he did not recognize her at all. He said in a daze, "Young lady, you must have mistaken me for someone else, right?" "Shan, don't call me that." Yu Jiao, who was at the side, blushed and reprimanded her. "I did not mistake you for someone else. You are brother-in-law," Eugene said with a sweet smile. The blush on Yu Jiao's face became even more obvious. It reached her ears. Lu Shan and Eugene had been with Yu Jiao for the past 10 days. The latter came to the spiritual formation once a day. Moreover, she would always look at Han Tian, whether intentionally or unintentionally, with her eyes shining. Lu Shang and Eugene would joke about this every time. Now that Han Tian had come out of the spiritual formation, how could they let go of the opportunity to tease Yu Jiao? Nie Tian shook his head and smiled. He glanced at Han Tian, indicating that the latter should not speak anymore. Han Tian is brother-in-law, then am I second brother-in-law? Seeing the lively scene, Jean de Bao laughed and said shamelessly, "Little fatty, don't talk nonsense. I am your martial uncle." Lu Shan glared at Lu Shan and hurriedly reprimanded. "Martial uncle?" Jean de Bao looked at the beautiful girl in front of him and laughed. "When did I, fatty, have such a beautiful martial uncle?" Lu Shan said seriously, "You are senior brother Sun Hai's disciple. Of course, I am your martial uncle." "You are the junior sister of my cheap teacher?" Jean de Bao was stunned for a moment. He immediately looked around and shouted, "Where is my cheap teacher?" Lu Shan was speechless. She glared at Jean de Bao again and said, "Senior brother Sun Hai has something to do. He has already returned to Sky Sword Pavilion." Jean de Bao nodded and smiled. He then rushed to Lu Shan's side and said, "Master Martial Uncle, I have just entered Sky Sword Pavilion. We need to communicate more in the future." "Communicate about what?" Lushan was startled and quickly jumped away from Jean de Bao. Jean de Bao laughed and said, "Anything is fine. As long as Master Martial Uncle likes it, I, Fatty, will communicate with you until dawn." Lushan blushed and glared at Jean de Bao angrily. She didn't dare to talk to this wretched Fatty anymore. Nie Tian waved his hand and signaled Jean de Bao to stop messing around. "Meow meow, let's go." Nie Tian called out to Xian Meow Meow and prepared to bring her to the Craftsman's Guild. He couldn't wait to see Huijia's expression. And Xian Meow Meow agreed. Nie Tian told Han Tian and Jean de Bao to rest for a month and prepare to enter the Forbidden Land of Wind and Cloud a month later. A moment later, in the Craftsman's Guild. Inside the room, Huijia's old face stiffened for a full 10 seconds. His eyes widened and his mouth opened wide, but he didn't know what to say. In just a short month, Xian Meow Meow's mental power had actually risen by 13 levels. My God, a whole 13 levels. Huijia felt dizzy. His ears were ringing with loud explosions, and his divine sense was a bit messed up. A 13th level mental power, even a monstrous one, would need at least a few years or even a few decades to reach that level. But Xian Meow Meow had only used a month. This had already broken Huijia's understanding of the martial way. This time, he was completely shocked by Nie Tian. Nie Tian had a faint smile on his face. He sipped his tea while looking at Huijia. The latter's reaction was within his expectations. "Teacher, are you all right?" Xian Meow Meow saw Huijia's old face tremble and his beard stand up. She stepped forward and asked with concern. Huijia fiercely swallowed a few times, and his expression eased a little. However, there were still 10,000 little rabbits running around in his heart, and it felt like his heart was about to explode. "How do you feel now, old manhua?" Nie Tian asked with a faint smile, looking rather proud. "I'm convinced." Huijia fiercely swallowed. He licked his dry lips and said, "Little Nie, I, old Hua, have never admired anyone in my life, but when it comes to you, I'm convinced." "Then, do you still want to take me as your disciple?" Nie Tian took a sip of tea and asked with a faint smile. "Of course not, of course not." Huijia chuckled. For someone like Nie Tian, it was already an honor to speak to him as an equal. How could he dare to have any other thoughts? Huijia thought back to the time when he swore that he would take Nie Tian as his disciple. Even he felt extremely childish. Chapter 831. 1 month later, outside the imperial city of Black Moon Empire. The sun had just risen from the horizon and the sunlight slowly moved from the east, illuminating the vast land. Dozens of figures appeared in the morning light. These people were the big shots of the Black Moon Empire, standing at the peak of the empire. The Emperor of the Black Moon Empire, the heads of the 4 families, and even the presidents of the Alchemist Guild and the Blacksmith Guild. It was rare to see these people gathered together. However, they were not the main characters today. The main characters were 10 young martial artists, because these 10 martial artists would represent the Black Moon Empire to participate in the Wind and Cloud duel. The leader of the 10 martial artists was none other than Nie Tian. Behind him stood 9 people, all of whom would participate in the Wind and Cloud duel with him. Nie Tian, Xian Qiu and the others, please take care of them. The Emperor of the Black Moon Empire, Xian Tianluo, looked at Nie Tian solemnly and transmitted his voice to Nie Tian. Nie Tian, old ancestor asked me to tell you that after the Wind and Cloud duel, he will wait for your reply. Nie Tian nodded. Xian Tianluo probably did not know that Xian Yi had already given up on Xian Qiu. The person Xian Yi asked Nie Tian to protect was Eugene, not Xian Qiu. Roar. At this time, a shrill cry sounded in the sky, and then a giant bird landed. Nie Tian gazed at the huge bird, which was over 100 meters long with a wingspan of several hundred meters. Its god-transcending feathers were as crimson as blood, and its eyes were as bright as the sun and the moon, emanating a fierce light. This was a rank 7 spirit beast, Blazing Eagle. It was gentle in nature, and its status in the Summer world was similar to that of the four-winged griffins in the 3,000 small worlds. Riding on the blazing eagle, Nye Tian and the others could reach the wind and cloud forbidden land in half a day. Originally, the fastest way to the wind and cloud forbidden land was to use the time-space scroll, but there was a certain risk. Although the risk was only 1 in 10,000, the wind and cloud forbidden land would not allow any accidents, so riding the blazing eagle was the best choice. Nye Tian did not waste time and stepped on the blazing eagle, and the other 9 people followed. Following that, a middle-aged man also leapt up. He was the one who had escorted Nye Tian and the others to the forbidden land of wind and cloud, the patriarch of the Yu family, Yu Qingshan. Although Nye Tian had always lived in the Jade Mansion, this was the first time he saw Yu Qingshan. This person was very low-key and rarely appeared. If Xian Tianluo had not arranged for him to escort Nye Tian and the others, Nye Tian would not have been able to see this person. Nye Tian looked at Yu Qingshan. This was a man who looked to be in his 40s. He was handsome and his facial features were like a sculpture, giving off a very resolute feeling. Nye Tian sensed Yu Qingshan's strength. He was very strong, at the 4th level of the sky-human realm. In the Mystic Moon Empire, he could be ranked within the top 10. Father! Yu Jiao looked at Yu Qingshan and called out respectfully. Although Yu Qingshan didn't want Yu Jiao to participate in the art of wind and cloud, he didn't stop her if she insisted. Your Majesty, let's go. Yu Qingshan nodded slightly to Xian Tianluo, then rode the blazing eagle and soared into the sky. A red light appeared in the sky and disappeared in the blink of an eye. Old Hua, do you think Nye Tian can walk out of the forbidden land of wind and cloud? Jia Guang looked at the direction where the blazing eagle disappeared and suddenly asked Hua Jia. Yes. Hua Jia also looked at the sky and said one word with certainty. Are you so sure? Jia Guang looked at Hua Jia strangely and said with a wry smile, the forbidden land of wind and cloud is a relic left from ancient times. For hundreds of years, no one has been able to walk out of the forbidden land. Nye Tian will be an exception. Old Jia, believe me. If I say that Nye Tian can come out, he will definitely come out. Hua Jia smiled faintly, his eyes full of confidence. Why? Jia Guang was stunned. He rarely saw Hua Jia show such great confidence in a person. Because he is the only person who can convince me wholeheartedly. Hua Jia laughed and said indifferently. Jia Guang was speechless. He had been dealing with Hua Jia for hundreds of years and had never seen him submit to anyone. High up in the sky, a fierce wind blew past like a knife, cutting people's faces and making them feel pain. Boss, what kind of place is the forbidden land of wind and cloud? Jean de Bao sat beside Nye Tian and asked curiously. Nye Tian smiled faintly and didn't say anything. Xian Qiu, who was beside him, sighed softly and introduced the forbidden land of wind and cloud. Jean de Bao was dumbfounded. He only knew that Nye Tian wanted to bring him to the forbidden land of wind and cloud, but he didn't know that the forbidden land of wind and cloud was so dangerous. Following that, the atmosphere became a little heavy. Everyone's eyes looked at Nye Tian intentionally or unintentionally, but he was the only one with a calm expression. The blazing eagle was extremely fast. Black Moon Imperial City was thousands of miles away from the forbidden land of wind and cloud, but they arrived in less than half a day. Everyone stood up and looked down. An endless mountain range appeared in their field of vision. We are about to land. Be careful. Yu Qingshan suddenly said. This was the first sentence he said to everyone. The blazing eagle swooped down from the sky like a fireball falling from the sky. A majestic pressure was released, and the giant trees on the ground were directly burned to ashes. Boom! The blazing eagle landed on a giant boulder. Waves of air surged in the surroundings, and all the trees within 1,000 meters were destroyed. Yu Qingshan was the first to jump down. Taking out a map, he scanned the surroundings and said, "Follow me." Nie Tian and the rest jumped down from the blazing eagle and followed closely. A moment later, everyone arrived at a hidden canyon. The forbidden land of wind and cloud is in this canyon. Standing at the entrance of the canyon, Nie Tian felt a strong restrictive aura. There was also the aura of a formation in the surrounding space. Black Moon Empire's trash, come in. At this time, a voice came from the canyon. The tone was very arrogant and carried a strong sense of mockery. When Nie Tian heard this person's voice, his eyes narrowed slightly. He was about to speak but was stopped by Yu Qingshan. Yu Qingshan shook his head slightly, indicating that Nie Tian should not be rash. Everyone entered the canyon and saw a gray-robed old man looking at them with a sinister smile. The corners of his mouth revealed undisguised contempt. Behind this old man were 10 relatively young faces. Some were in their 20s while others were in their 30s. However, without exception, all of them were Heavenly Evolution 9th level martial artists. Nie Tian scanned the 10 people in front of him. One of them immediately attracted his attention. This person looked to be in his 20s. His eyes were cold and his aura was restrained. Even so, his body exuded traces of coldness and sharpness. At this time, this person suddenly raised his head and stared straight at Nie Tian. Nie Tian immediately felt as if a knife was stabbing at him. Nie Tian suddenly felt a sharp murderous intent from the other party. He could not help but narrow his eyes. Chapter 832. That person glanced at Nie Tian and called out his name. Then, he immediately attacked. A terrifying saber intent bloomed in the air and pounced at Nie Tian. Nie Tian reacted quickly. A sharp and murderous sword intent surged out of his body. Boom! The saber intent and sword intent collided in the air. The void trembled, and both of them took a step back. The saber intent of the person who attacked was very strong. It was definitely not weaker than Lingya, who had attacked Nie Tian that day. Moreover, this person's saber intent was not only cold but also overbearing. He was a very strong opponent. You are from the Burial Blade Society, Nie Tianling said coldly as he looked at the other party. The other party was a saber user. Moreover, he attacked immediately after looking at him. Hence, he felt that the other party was from the Burial Blade Society. However, the man didn't say anything. After casting a cold glance at Nie Tian, he withdrew his aura, as if nothing had happened just now. B*****. You attacked for no reason just now. Now you are pretending to be quiet, right? Jean de Bao shouted angrily. That person still did not speak. He completely ignored Jean de Bao. Nie Tian stopped Jean de Bao and shook his head slightly, indicating that he should forget about it. His name is Hu Qi. He is from the Scorching Sun Empire. He is not from the Burial Blade Society. The gray-robed old man spoke up. His voice was calm as he sized up Nie Tian. He seemed to be very surprised. Among the 5 major forces, the Scorching Sun Empire was the only one who did not pay a visit to Xianyu. They did not know who Nie Tian was. The gray-robed elder glanced at Hu Qi. He seemed surprised that Hu Qi knew this silver-haired cultivator. What surprised him even more was Nie Tian's strength. Hu Qi was at the Heavenly Evolution level 9. Moreover, he was a saber user at the Saber Soul realm. He was known as the #1 saber user in the Scorching Sun Empire. Just now, when Hu Qi and Nie Tian had exchanged blows, they had actually been evenly matched, which made him very shocked by Nie Tian's strength. Are the others here? Yu Qingshan asked coldly. He did not want to talk nonsense with the people from the Scorching Sun Empire. Soon, the corners of the gray-robed elder's mouth twitched as a strange smile appeared on his face. Nie Tian looked out of the canyon. With his starry sky eye, he saw that the other 3 forces were heading towards the canyon from thousands of meters away. At this moment, he was already at the 6th level of the Heavenly Evolution realm. He had awakened 60 billion stars in the 2nd level of the galaxy, and the inside of the starry sky eye was even more powerful. Earlier, he hadn't sensed the presence of the other three parties, but this gray-robed old man had. His perception was so strong that it was actually above Nietion's. Nietion's divine sense swept past the gray-robed old man. The latter's strength was the same as Yuqingshan's, a fourth-layer sky human realm expert. A moment later, the people from the other three forces arrived. The Dark Moon Empire, the Blazing Sun Empire, the Konoha Empire, the Sky Sword Pavilion, and the Absolute Heaven Sect were all present. Nietion glanced at the people of Sky Sword Pavilion. Sure enough, Lushan was among them. Big sister, third sister. When Lushan saw Yu Jiao and Eugene, she quickly ran over, looking very excited. Seeing that the people from the Dark Moon Empire and Sky Sword Pavilion were already very close even before entering the forbidden area, the expressions of the other three forces became slightly strange. The Prince of the Dark Moon Empire, the daughter of the Pavilion Master of Sky Sword Pavilion. This time, the wind and cloud duel is going to be interesting. The leader of the Absolute Heaven Sect's team was a sinister middle-aged man named Zhu Yuan. He glanced at Xian Qiu and Lushan and said with a playful expression. The others also looked over coldly, their gazes extremely unfriendly. Since everyone is here, let's open the wind and cloud forbidden area. Yuqingshan's reaction was very calm. As he spoke, a spirit talisman appeared in his hand. Okay. The others nodded. They didn't want to waste time and also took out a spirit talisman. Yuqingshan and the other four released the runes in the spirit talisman at the same time. The 5 runes circulated in the void like 5 surging snakes. They gradually gathered together and slowly seeped into the cliff of the canyon. Then, a miraculous scene appeared. The originally still cliff of the canyon suddenly shook violently. Immediately, a grand image appeared on the cliff, as if there were thousands of worlds and endless time and space within the cliff. Everyone was dumbfounded. This was the first time they had seen such a scene. Nietion's eyes narrowed slightly. He had already figured out that the cliff in front of him was a restrictive spell. It should have been set up by the formation masters of the 5 major sects together. Only by gathering all 5 talismans could the restrictive spell be opened. After a while, a pillar of light shot out from the cliff. The light was dazzling. Looking at the light pillar, one could see a long and narrow passage. Yuqingshan and the other 4 heaved a long sigh of relief. Beads of sweat appeared on their foreheads. It seemed that opening the restriction required a lot of yuan qi. We can enter now. Yuqingshan kept the spirit talisman and looked at Nietion. Nietion nodded. Glancing at the people around him, he walked forward and prepared to be the first to enter the forbidden area. Nietion, rumor has it that there are many ancient killing arrays in the forbidden area. You must be careful. When Nietion passed by Yuqingshan, the latter warned him. Nietion nodded. This was the first time Yuqingshan spoke to him of his own accord. It was rare. Nietion did not linger any longer. Taking a deep breath, he stepped into the light pillar. At this moment, he had a strange feeling. It was as if the time and space around him had changed and his body was no longer his. Nietion did not care too much. His silhouette flashed and he dashed forward along the light pillar. The others followed closely behind Nietion. After a while, Nietion felt the light in front of him weaken. He took another step forward and the feeling of time and space changing disappeared. His silhouette appeared in a valley. The others also appeared slowly. Soon, all 50 martial artists had entered. Is this the forbidden area of wind and cloud? Nietion looked around, but didn't find anything strange. It was just that the fog was very thick and visibility was very low. Roar! Right at this moment, a majestic roar suddenly sounded out from all directions. It seemed vast and imposing, as if an ancient beast had opened its mouth wide and was waiting for them to come in. It was also at this moment that Nietion suddenly sensed the appearance of an extremely powerful spell formation. Then, the space suddenly shook and the surrounding fog became even thicker. What's going on? Is there someone else here? Everyone felt a sharp murderous intent. It was as if they were surrounded and a strong aura was pressing down on them. Nye Tian spread out his divine sense and immediately found that there were countless runes and spiritual patterns surging in the surrounding space. They were like sleeping beasts. If they were awakened, they would immediately erupt with the most terrifying murderous intent. Everyone restrain your aura. Don't move. Nye Tian suddenly sensed something and shouted. But it was too late. Boom! Someone felt the murderous intent and directly struck out with his palm. Surging yuan qi rolled out and bombarded the runes in the space. It immediately triggered the runes to resist. The strange runes became berserk, turning into a powerful force that blasted towards the person who had attacked. Chapter 833. Hiss! Seeing this scene, everyone sucked in a breath of cold air. Their eyes could not help but tremble. As soon as they entered the forbidden area, a person died. Moreover, this person did not even know how he died. Everyone, restrain your aura and don't move. Nye Tian shouted again, indicating that everyone should not be nervous. He could already see that they were now in a killing array and the runes around them were the source of the killing intent. These killing array runes were very quiet now, but once they came into contact with elemental energy, they would become violent. This was a killing array left behind from ancient times. After hundreds of thousands of years, it still maintained a terrifying power. Rumble! Just as Nye Tian finished speaking, the ground suddenly shook a few hundred meters in front of everyone. Then, the entire ground was lifted up as if there was a terrifying force surging under the ground. Walala! Then, a strange sound was heard. Countless black things drilled out from the ground. What are those things? Someone exclaimed. Countless black things appeared in front of them. It was a vast expanse and there was no end in sight. Nye Tian's eyes narrowed. He looked over and saw that the armor was filled with black fog. There was no physical body. These armors were like a tide, surging towards everyone. Retreat! Nye Tian let out a low roar as he suddenly felt that the killing spell formation around him had become even more violent after the appearance of the suits of armor. Master, these are corpse soldiers. Inside the Chaos Source coffin, the voice of the cadavered demon Monarch sounded. They are soldiers who died in the ancient battlefield. Under the control of the killing array, they turned into corpse soldiers. Soldiers from the ancient battlefield. Nye Tian's heart trembled slightly. He did not know the combat strength of these corpse soldiers. If they maintained the same combat strength as when they were alive, all of them would die here. The ancient warriors were far stronger than the current warriors. They were not people they could fight against. Quick, run! Some people were already completely scared out of their wit. They shouted loudly and desperately ran away. People of Black Moon Empire and Sky Sword Pavilion, stay by my side. In this critical situation, Nye Tian roared and slashed out with his sword. Boundless Sword will blast it out, and a huge sword shadow crashed down. The soldier who attacked first was directly smashed into pieces. At the same time, the terrifying runes bombarded Nye Tian's body. He activated the Extreme Water Heavenly Battle Armor in advance and forcibly blocked the attack of the runes. Even so, Nye Tian still felt his Yuan meridians tremble. He felt salty in his throat and spat out a mouthful of blood. The killing array's runes were too powerful. Even Nye Tian would be injured. After slashing out with his sword, Nye Tian immediately felt that something was wrong. After the corpse soldier fell, it stood up again. These things can't be killed, Xian Qiu exclaimed. His face was slightly flustered. He knew that the Wind Cloud Forbidden Zone was very dangerous, but he didn't expect to face a life and death crisis as soon as he entered. Nye Tian frowned. The current situation was very urgent. The corpse soldier was charging over, but they couldn't do anything, because once they did, they would be killed by the killing array. Since it's a killing array, there must be an array core. We must break the array core, or we won't be able to leave this place. Nyetian became cold and said in a deep voice, Boss, what's the array core? Jean de Bao exclaimed and asked. Charge over. Nyetian suddenly looked at the corpse soldier rolling over. Since the corpse soldier was charging over from the opposite side, the array core must be there too. Charge through. Everyone was taken aback as they stared at Nyetian as if saying, Are you crazy? The others were running for their lives, but Nyetian actually wanted to charge over. Wasn't this courting death? I believe in teacher. At this time, Han Tian roared and was the first to stand out. He shouted, Follow me and charge forward. As soon as he finished speaking, his two arms suddenly swelled up and turned into rocks. Han Tian's strength had already reached the 5th level of heavenly evolution. Both his arms could be turned into stone. Xian Qiu, attack. Nyetian roared and followed Han Tian. Okay. Xian Qiu was stunned for a moment, but he immediately agreed. Under such circumstances, he could only choose to believe in Nyetian. The three of them charged in front, and the people behind followed closely behind. Waves upon waves of corpse soldiers were crushed, and Nyetian and the others rushed out of the endless corpse soldiers to create a path. What are they doing? The others were puzzled when they saw the people from Black Moon Empire and Sky Sword Pavilion charging towards the corpse soldiers. Let's charge over too. At this time, a voice sounded. It was the person who attacked Nyetian previously, Hu Qi. The people from Blazing Sun Empire clearly followed Hu Qi's lead and rushed forward. When the other two factions saw this, they stopped running and followed suit, charging towards the corpse soldiers. Nyetian and the rest rushed at the front. Not only did they have to bear the impact of the corpse soldiers, but they also had to resist the killing formation runes. After a while, Nyetian and Xian Qiu's bodies were covered in blood. However, Han Tian, with his heavenly stone body, did not suffer too much damage. Boom! At this time, a loud sound suddenly came from the front. The ground was lifted up, and then a giant corpse soldier that was dozens of meters tall appeared. Damn, it's a corpse soldier commander! Corpse Demon Monarch screamed, and his expression changed. Boom! 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 Before he could finish his words, the ground around them exploded. The ground was lifted up, and countless corpse soldier commanders appeared. Oh no! Nyetian felt the aura of the corpse soldier commanders and knew that things were not good. These corpse soldier commanders were obviously much stronger than the corpse soldiers. They were at least at the 5th level of heavenly evolution. If they were to deal with these corpse soldier commanders alone, Nyetian and the rest would have no problem. The key was that there was the existence of the killing formation runes, so they did not dare to use powerful moves. Han Tian, charge! Nyetian leapt into the air and roared at Han Tian. Yes. Han Tian nodded heavily. His huge arm blocked in front of him, like a savage beast, recklessly charging forward. Nyetian was in midair, and he slashed at the nearest corpse soldier commander. He could not let the corpse soldier commander block Han Tian. Once the speed of everyone's charge was slowed down, countless soldiers would swarm over. At that time, it would be really troublesome. Boom! With a slash of the sword, the corpse soldier commander was directly shattered with a muffled sound. But in the next moment, the corpse soldier commander stood up again and charged at Nyetian again. Not only was the corpse soldier commander stronger, but its recovery ability was also far superior to ordinary corpse soldiers. At the same time that Nyetian stabbed out with his sword, the power of a rune bombarded him. Even with the protection of the extreme water Yuan sky battle armor, he still spat out a mouthful of blood. At this time, Nyetian finally understood why no one had walked out of the windy cloud forbidden land for hundreds of years. Just this killing formation in front of him was enough to kill everyone. Boom! The ground was still shaking, and more corpse soldier commanders drilled out from under the ground. These corpse soldier commanders seemed to have spiritual intelligence, and they all rushed at Nyetian. Chapter 834. Nye Tian was surrounded by zombie soldiers and was in danger. These zombie soldiers were not very strong. They were only equivalent to Heavenly Evolution Level 5 martial artists. However, when they attacked at the same time, their power could not be underestimated. Most importantly, Nye Tian did not dare to unleash his true strength. The killing formation runes were even more terrifying than the zombie soldiers. Boss! Jean de Bao could not help but exclaim when he saw Nye Tian surrounded by zombie soldiers. Don't worry about me. Continue charging forward. Nye Tian shouted, indicating to Han Tian and Xian Qiu that they must not stop and continue charging forward. I'll go help him, Eugene shouted. She flew up and slammed her palm down, directly shattering 2 zombie soldiers. However, she was also attacked by the runes at the same time. Her body swayed slightly, and she spat out a mouthful of blood. Your Highness! Seeing that Eugene was injured, a voice rang out. Then, a figure shot into the sky, and a pair of strange black wings appeared on his back. That person flapped his wings, and 2 black rays whizzed out. Another 2 zombie soldiers fell to the ground. Nye Tian glanced at that person. He was called Lin Feng, and he was also from the Heavenly Demon Cult. He was here to protect Eugene. Xian Yi had asked Nye Tian for 2 spots in the Wind and Cloud duel, which were given to Eugene and Lin Feng. Lin Feng was at Heavenly Evolution Level 9. Nye Tian did not expect him to be so powerful as well. 8 Desolation Sword! Nye Tian roared. Terrifying sword intent surged out of his body. The sword light bloomed in the sky, directly shattering more than a dozen zombie soldiers around him. At the same time, he used the dragon scale shield to withstand the attack of the runes. Eugene, you guys go back, Nye Tian said solemnly. His figure moved, and he caught up with Han Tian and the others. On the other side, the other 3 groups were also charging forward with all their might. They attracted a lot of firepower for Nye Tian, which made it much easier for Nye Tian. Nye Tian looked forward in midair. There was a dazzling light in front of him. It seemed like they would be able to charge out of this valley soon. The others also realized this. As long as they rushed out of this valley, they would be safe. However, at this moment, the ground began to shake violently as if an earthquake was about to happen. Then, countless huge tombstones suddenly sprang out of the ground in front of them. Each tombstone was 100 meters tall and looked exceptionally sturdy. All the tombstones were connected together, forming a wall that blocked everyone's path forward. Not good, it's a formation. When Nye Tian saw the tombstone in front of him, his expression suddenly changed. He immediately felt the terrifying aura of an array formation coming from the tombstone. The aura of the array formation inside the tombstone was very strong, and the runes of the killing array were surging out from the tombstone. Master, the array core of the killing array must be one of these tombstones. Corpse Luo Demon Monarch exclaimed excitedly. Nye Tian nodded. He also knew that, but the problem was how to determine which tombstone was the array core with so many tombstones. At this time, everyone had rushed to less than 100 meters away from the tombstone wall. There was no way forward. Mr. Nye, what should we do? Xian Qiu's expression changed. He could no longer hide the shock in his heart and shouted. De Bao, follow me. Nye Tian ignored him and shouted. Jean de Bao responded. His huge body leaped up and came to Nye Tian's side. If anyone could tell which tombstone was the array core, it would be Jean de Bao. The latter was someone who had the 3,000 seals of gods and demons. His perception was even above Nye Tian's. Now that Jean de Bao had a 6th-tier divine wheel and had unlocked hundreds of the seals of gods and demons in his body, he should be able to find the tombstone that was the array core. Boss! Jean de Bao glanced at Nye Tian. He also did not know why Nye Tian had asked him to come. Take a look at these tombstones. Which one is different from the others? Nye Tian said directly. Yes. Jean de Bao immediately understood what Nye Tian meant. He nodded and then closed his eyes. The seals of gods and demons in his body turned into a strange light that surged in the space. Like tentacles, they moved toward the tombstone wall. At this time, countless corpse soldiers suddenly rushed out of the tombstones. These corpse soldiers were completely different from the corpse soldiers from before. They were actually corporeal and had a stronger corpse aura. Faint green light flowed around their bodies. Apart from their dull eyes, they were no different from ordinary ancient martial art practitioners. The strength of these corpse soldiers is actually at the 9th tier of the heavenly evolution realm. Nie Tian used his divine sense to sense them, and his expression changed. This time, he could actually clearly sense the strength of these corpse soldiers. Master, these people are corpse soldiers that died not long ago. The corpse demon lord's voice sounded again. As if he had thought of something, he shouted, I know, they are ancient martial art practitioners who entered the forbidden land of wind and cloud before. Nie Tian immediately understood. No wonder these corpse soldiers had corporeal bodies and could sense their specific strength. These corpse soldiers were ancient martial art practitioners who had entered the forbidden land of wind and cloud before. They had all died not long ago, at most a few hundred years ago. Their corpses were still very intact. At this time, more than 10 corpse soldiers suddenly leaped up and attacked Jean de Bao at the same time. It seemed that they also sensed that Jean de Bao was a threat. Don't even think about hurting him. Nie Tian roared angrily. The dark blue battle armor wrapped around Jean de Bao's body. His heavenly water pole primordial armor could withstand the attacks of a 9th tier heavenly evolution realm martial art practitioner. Fortunately, these ancient martial art practitioners were below the heaven tier. If they were all heaven tier ancient martial art practitioners, it would be terrible. Boom, boom, boom. Countless attacks landed on Jean de Bao's body, but they were all blocked by the battle armor. At this time, all the corpse soldiers turned to Nie Tian. Nie Tian gasped. It was very difficult to deal with so many 9th tier heavenly evolution realm martial art practitioners at the same time and resist the attacks of the killing formation runes. Meanwhile, Han Tian and the others were still dealing with the corpse soldiers that kept surging over. They had no time to help Nie Tian. Kill him! At this time, a voice suddenly sounded. It seemed to come from a tombstone, but it was impossible to determine which tombstone it was. Boom, boom, boom. More and more zombie soldiers crawled out of the tombstones and gathered together to attack Nie Tian. Fight! Nie Tian roared angrily. Endless starlight surged out of his body, and a large starlight net appeared. It was the shrouding sky totem. Nie Tian really did not expect that he would have to use the shrouding sky totem when he had just arrived at the wind and cloud stage. The shrouding sky totem appeared and directly enveloped Nie Tian and the others. Countless attacks fell and bombarded the shrouding sky totem, but they could not break through the totem's defense. With Nie Tian's current strength, the shrouding sky totem was enough to resist the attacks of a 3rd tier heaven tier ancient martial art practitioner. Those corpse soldiers could not break through the shrouding sky totem's defense, but the terrifying killing formation runes bombarded the shrouding sky totem, making it difficult for Nie Tian. He felt his body churning, and even the domain zone formation became unstable. This ancient killing formation was very strange. The stronger the power of the outside world, the stronger the power of the killing formation. Pft! Nie Tian spat out a mouthful of blood, and his face became slightly pale. Chapter 835. Jean de Bao was very excited when he finally found the tombstone. Boss, are you all right? But when he saw Nie Tian and realized that he was injured, he could not help but cry out. I'm fine. Nie Tian wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth and looked at the tombstone that Jean de Bao was pointing at. He smiled faintly. He observed carefully and found that the tombstone was indeed emitting a faint green glow. The aura of the array formation was also stronger than that of the other tombstones. Fortunately, Jean de Bao was here. Otherwise, if Nie Tian were to search for the array formation himself, who knew how long it would take? Boom! Boom! Bang! At that moment, there were continuous explosions in the air. The corpse soldiers' attacks on the totem became more violent, and the starlight on the totem dimmed a little. Nie Tian looked at the tombstone with a burning gaze. He asked Jean de Bao to leave and put away the totem. Nie Tian took a look. It would not be easy to rush to the tombstone of the Formation I. There were hundreds of corpse soldiers in the 9th tier of the heavenly evolution realm blocking the way. However, if the stalemate continued, the situation would become even more dangerous. More corpse soldiers and corpse soldier commanders surged over. They all had immortal bodies and could stand up even if they were shattered. The only thing they could do now was to shatter the tombstone, and the killing array would automatically break. Han Tian, rush over and shatter that tombstone. Nie Tian roared at Han Tian. Among everyone present, apart from Jean de Bao, Han Tian was the only one that Nie Tian could absolutely trust. Yes, Han Tian replied. His two petrified arms danced wildly. The corpse soldiers within dozens of meters could not withstand the powerful aura of the petrified arms and were directly shattered. Han Tian, that tombstone is the array formation's eye. You must shatter it. Nie Tian moved to Han Tian's side and stabbed with his sword, shattering all the surrounding corpse soldiers. However, the corpse soldiers on the other side surged over, and Han Tian was exhausted. One more. With Nie Tian's strength alone, he could not fight against all the corpse soldiers, so he could only shout. Xian Qiu was stunned. However, when he saw the hundreds of 9th-level heavenly evolution zombie soldiers in front of him, he gulped and actually took a step back. Let me do it. Eugene let out a loud roar and was just about to rush over to help, but there was a person behind her who rushed over a step ahead of her, and it was Lin Feng. Lin Feng was a member of the Heavenly Demon Cult, and the purpose of this trip was to protect Eugene. How could he let her be in danger? A pair of black wings appeared on Lin Feng's back, directly sweeping the corpse soldiers within dozens of meters into the air. The strange black light appeared again, shattering all the corpse soldiers in the air. All right. Let's charge forward. When Nie Tian saw Lin Feng appear, he roared angrily and looked at the tombstone again. Nie Tian, Han Tian, Lin Feng, the three of them formed a triangular formation, like a sharp blade, rushing towards the tombstone of the Formation I. The corpse soldiers seemed to know that Nie Tian and the others were going to destroy the tombstone of the Formation I, and they all swarmed over in an attempt to stop them. Get out of my way! Han Tian roared angrily, and his arms actually grew a little more. With a punch, he shattered 4 or 5 9th-level heavenly evolution zombie soldiers, and the air was filled with a bloody light. Nie Tian and Lin Feng acted at the same time, blocking the corpse soldiers on both sides, not letting them get close to Han Tian. The three figures quickly approached the tombstone of the Formation I, and soon they were only a few meters away from it. When they arrived in front of the tombstone of the Formation I, the three of them gasped. The tombstone in front of them was extremely huge, at least 100 meters tall, and it looked like an indestructible city wall. Destroy it, Nie Tian said solemnly. Boom. Han Tian nodded, and without hesitation, he threw a punch. Immediately, there was an earth-shattering sound, and the entire valley shook violently. However, the tombstone only trembled slightly, and it was actually completely undamaged, without even a crack. At the same time, Han Tian was directly sent flying by the power of the killing formation runes. This? Nie Tian gasped. He did not expect the tombstone to be so sturdy. Han Tian had a heavenly stone body, but he could not even make a crack. Let me. At this moment, Lin Feng's eyes narrowed, and an endless amount of violent energy suddenly surged out from his body. The black wings behind him began to spin rapidly, forming a huge storm vortex around his body. His entire person looked like a huge black tornado. Wind attribute. Nie Tian's eyes narrowed slightly. Lin Feng's strength was still above his expectations. The people of the heavenly demon cult were indeed very strong. Nie Tian and Han Tian retreated dozens of meters, quietly watching Lin Feng, hoping that the latter could destroy the tombstone of the formation Eye. Some corpse soldiers saw Lin Feng approaching the tombstone, and they all rushed over. However, before they could get within 10 meters of Lin Feng, they were swept up by the tornado and directly turned into flying ashes. Jia! Jia! The tombstone of the formation Eye seemed to have sensed danger, and an ear-piercing sound rang out in the surroundings, cold and strange. Boom! Lin Feng's figure directly rushed over, and the huge tornado lifted up the ground, and a terrible explosion sounded in the void. Bang! However, the next moment, a dull sound rang out, and a terrifying rune power descended. The crazily rotating black tornado suddenly stopped, and a figure flew out. It was Lin Feng. Lin Feng was directly pierced by the rune power, and blood gushed out of his chest. Countless corpse soldiers smelled the scent of blood, and became even more violent, rushing toward Lin Feng like a tide. Han Tian, protect him! Seeing this, Nie Tian shouted, and his figure immediately moved, directly rushing toward the tombstone of the formation Eye. Lin Feng's attack just now left a shocking crack on the tombstone of the formation Eye, which undoubtedly showed that his strength was far above Han Tian's. I want to see how strong this tombstone is. Coldness shot out of Nie Tian's eyes, and his body shook. Countless sword wills gushed out, and his whole body was covered in blood. In an instant, an endless amount of blood qi was released, and the bloody and violent aura surged hundreds of meters away. Master! Han Tian helped Lin Feng to stand up, and seeing that Nie Tian was covered in blood, he did not know what he was going to do. Nie Tian's figure stood in midair, and his whole body was wrapped in endless blood qi and sword wills. Slowly, a blood-colored sword array gradually appeared around him, and it surrounded him continuously. Proud sword art, sword seal array. Then, the corner of Nie Tian's mouth curled up into a cold smile, and the blood qi all over his body became even more violent. The blood-colored sword array suddenly began to operate, and a powerful force of the sword array circulated around Nie Tian's body. Nie Tian only had one chance to attack. If he failed, it would trigger the strongest counterattack of the killing array, and then he would be in great danger. The next sword attack would not only determine Nie Tian's safety, but also the lives of everyone else. World-devouring sword dragon. Nie Tian stood in the air, and his eyes became determined, and his cold voice slowly sounded. As his voice fell, in the sword seal array, the power of the sword array instantly condensed, and a blood-colored divine dragon appeared from the sword array. The blood-colored divine dragon was hundreds of meters long, and its eyes were crimson red, like the sun and the moon. The dragon's scales on its body emitted a violent and bloody aura. Chapter 836. Roar! The body of the sword dragon rolled in the void, and let out a deafening dragon roar. The whole world seemed to be boiling. Jia Jia! The tombstone in the eye of the formation felt a great threat and let out an even more eerie and ear-piercing cry. Destroy it! Nie Tian's eyes were cold and fierce. With a deep roar, the huge body of the sword dragon rolled out. Terrifying sword intent and dragon qi surged around its body, rushing and whistling as if it wanted to destroy the world in front of it. What a terrifying strength! Lin Feng and Han Tian were dumbfounded. Just getting close to the blood-red sword dragon made them feel suffocated and short of breath. There was a strong sense of oppression. Nie Tian's strength was too strong, beyond their imagination. Boom! The blood-red sword dragon charged straight at the tombstone like a berserk ancient beast, crashing into the formation core tombstone. Boom! The surging momentum pressed down, and the space tightened. With a loud bang, the tombstone in the eye of the formation was directly shattered. Phew! When Nie Tian saw the tombstone in the eye of the formation was broken, he let out a long sigh of relief, and his face relaxed a little. The moment the tombstone in the eye of the formation was destroyed, the corpse soldiers on the ground directly fell to the ground, turning into black gas and dissipating. Boom! 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 At the same time, there was a series of roars on the ground, and the surrounding tombstones all drilled into the ground. Seeing this scene, everyone's face relaxed and they let out a long sigh of relief. The surrounding corpse soldiers all disappeared, and the thick fog in the air also disappeared. Everyone's face relaxed, and they couldn't help but smile. Slowly, everything around them became clear. This time, everyone found that they were in a valley, and the valley was filled with giant rocks that were hundreds of meters high. The valley was very big, and there were cliffs on 3 sides, and only one side was the exit. If they had only cared about escaping just now, they would have been drowned by the corpse soldiers, and they would have ended up like the previous warriors, becoming new corpse soldiers in the killing formation. After this battle, everyone finally understood how dangerous the forbidden land of wind and cloud was. If it weren't for Nyetian, everyone would have become corpses by now. Nyetian landed on the ground and forced a smile out of the corner of his mouth. Is everyone all right? The forbidden land of wind and cloud was far more dangerous than he had imagined. He had only just arrived and already encountered such a terrifying killing array. Who knew what he would encounter later? Nyetian reckoned that all the warriors from before had died in this valley in front of him. We're fine. Jean de Bao chuckled. This fellow was very optimistic. Nyetian, are you all right? Yu Jiao asked with concern when she saw Nyetian's pale face. I won't die yet. Nyetian laughed bitterly. He had only used up too much of his essence force. He would be fine after a short rest. Lin Feng, on the other hand, had been severely injured by the killing array runes. Even with the recovery ability of the heavens spill true meaning, he would need at least a few days to fully recover. Han Tian, for the next few days, you'll be in charge of protecting him, Nie Tian said to Han Tian. At the same time, he glanced at Xian Qiu, who lowered his head in shame. At that time, Nie Tian had wanted Xian Qiu to help, but the latter had retreated. At this time, the people from the other 3 factions also walked over. Their gazes swept over Nie Tian from time to time, fear and respect in their eyes. The people from the Blazing Sun Empire, Konoha Empire, and Heaven-Severing Sect had died and a few more were injured. This was already a very small price to pay. If not for Nie Tian, everyone would have died in this valley. The bladesman called Hu Qi glared at Nie Tian, undisguised killing intent in his eyes. Nie Tian didn't pay any attention to him, but he became more cautious. Nie Tian, let's hurry and leave. If the corpse soldiers appear again, we'll be in trouble, Lu Shan said carefully, a trace of fear on her delicate face. Nie Tian nodded slightly and prepared to leave. Quick, look, what's that? At this time, there was a sudden scream. A warrior pointed at the cliff, as if he had seen something extremely terrifying. His face was as white as a sheet. Huh! Nie Tian's eyes narrowed slightly. He looked up and his pupils suddenly shrank. His expression changed. Hiss! Everyone gasped when they saw the scene on the cliff. They were immediately stunned. There were countless giant coffins hanging on the cliff. Countless black coffins hung on the cliff. At a glance, the entire cliff was densely packed with coffins. A rough estimate would put there at least tens of thousands of them. These coffins varied in size. The big ones were hundreds or even thousands of meters long, while the small ones were only 3 or 4 meters. Most of the coffins were black, but occasionally there would be grayish-white or even crimson. The strangest thing was that the space around the coffins was surging with strange tadpole-shaped runes, releasing an extremely powerful aura. There was dead silence. Everyone stared blankly at the scene above their heads. They were completely shocked. There are so many coffins. What's inside? After a long time, someone finally reacted and said dumbly, "Won't we know if we go and take a look?" A voice rang out. A warrior from the Heaven-Severing Sect flew up and actually rushed toward the cliff. Don't go over there! Nyetian saw someone rushing over and shouted. But it was too late. Swoosh! Just as the person leaped up, a terrifying sword will suddenly appeared in the void. Suddenly, a sword light that was hundreds of meters long slashed down, and the figure was directly smashed into meat paste. When everyone saw this, their hearts trembled, and their eyes revealed unconcealable fear. Idiot! Nie Tianling scolded. That person was too rash. He had rushed over without knowing anything. He was asking for it. This was the forbidden land of wind and cloud. There were killing arrays everywhere. How could he just barge in? What's going on? The crowd's eyes trembled, and their expressions became strange. There was clearly nothing in the air. Why did a terrifying killing intent suddenly surge out? No matter what, that person was a 9th-level heavenly evolution warrior. He was not weak, but he had been directly smashed into meat paste by that sword will. This was too terrifying. Nie Tian stared at the sky and opened his starry sky eyes. He finally saw that there was a huge sword array in the void that enveloped all the coffins. A terrifying sword will surged in the sword array. It was vast and boundless, like a huge monster that could destroy everything. Everyone, don't act rashly. The floating coffins are protected by the sword array. Don't get close, Nie Tian shouted, reminding everyone not to be reckless. Ah, it's too dangerous here. I want to leave. At this time, a terrified cry rang out. Someone was scared out of his wits and directly rushed out of the valley. However, at this time, a cold voice suddenly rang out in the void. Since you're here, why are you in such a hurry to leave? After hundreds of thousands of years, humans have finally come here. How can I bear to let you go? The voice was cold and mocking, like a sigh from hell. It came from all directions and resounded in everyone's ears. Everyone suddenly looked up. In the void, a pair of eyes that were like black holes slowly appeared, like a bottomless abyss, staring at everyone. Chapter 837. Hiss! Everyone looked up at the eye of the abyss above their heads and gasped. In the void, there was only a pair of eyes. They were extremely evil, and seemed to be able to penetrate into one's heart, releasing an extremely eerie coldness. This pair of eyes was extremely cold, and everyone who was swept by them felt as if they had fallen into the depths of a cold sea. Nie Tian was stared at by those eyes, and his heart suddenly trembled. In an instant, he seemed to see the scene of him being plotted against by Luo Xian, while Luo Chunhun and the others looked cold from the side, seemingly laughing at his incompetence and stupidity. Nie Tian focused slightly, and the illusion in front of him disappeared. He immediately understood that those eyes seemed to have a strange magic that could evoke the most terrifying scene in people's hearts. Don't kill me! I didn't do that! I beg you, let me go! Then, the others screamed one after another, and some even had a dull look in their eyes. They knelt on the ground and desperately begged for mercy, but there was nothing in front of them. Nie Tian did not care about these people. He calmed down and said calmly, "Who are you, Your Excellency?" Although this pair of eyes was strange, it was not enough to make Nie Tian afraid. However, Nie Tian was not sure if the eyes in the void were human, or if they were like those corpse soldiers, just a soul without a physical body. Just now, the other party said that he had been waiting here for hundreds of thousands of years. It was impossible for human warriors to exist for hundreds of thousands of years. The identity of the other party was very strange. Someone who is about to die, does it still mean anything to you if you know who I am? The eye in the sky shook and a gigantic silhouette slowly appeared. It had no physical body, and was only formed by the sky-piercing killing intent. However, it was holding a gigantic iron sword in its hand. It was simple and unadorned, exuding a chilling sword intent. The other party directly said that Nie Tian was about to die. Obviously, he did not intend to let Nie Tian and the others leave here alive. Humph! Suddenly, the person sneered and said, "Human warriors, I am very surprised that you can break the tombstone killing array. However, this is also good. Let me play with you. Acting all mysterious. At this moment, a cold voice filled with killing intent rang out, after which, a terrifying saber intent gushed out, blooming in the air as it shot towards the figure in the sky. The saber intent was sharp and somber, and the killing chi was extremely heavy. The entire space was filled with a layer of dense coldness. Just as the blade intent bloomed, the surrounding space suddenly darkened, and the void was covered in a layer of extremely cold aura. What a terrifying blade intent! The crowd's eyes trembled slightly, and someone exclaimed, "It's him." Nye Tian turned around and looked. The person who had attacked was indeed Hu Qi, the saber-wielder who had attacked him earlier. The figure in the void trembled slightly and said in a surprised voice, "You're actually a saber-wielder at the Saber Soul Realm. Not bad, but unfortunately, it's far from enough." As the extremely cold voice fell, the huge iron sword suddenly pierced through the air. A cold sword will flew past, directly breaking through the dark saber will, and sent Hu Qi flying backward. Hu Qi did not even have time to scream. After falling to the ground, he immediately fainted. "Lord Hu Qi!" The people from the Scorching Sun Empire exclaimed, and went forward to carry Hu Qi away. Everyone was stunned and instantly reacted. They looked nervously at the figure in the void. Nye Tian's eyebrows furrowed. He hadn't expected this man to be so powerful. Hu Qi was at the Heavenly Evolution Tier 9, and he was also a saber-wielder at the Saber Soul Realm. His battle prowess was even stronger than that of ordinary Celestial Realm martial artists. However, such strength was actually unable to withstand a single blow from the other party. It was simply too shocking. However, Nye Tian also discovered something strange at the same time. Although Hu Qi was unconscious, he was not injured. Nye Tian looked up at the figure in the void and immediately realized that the other party had no origin power. He only had the sword principal realm. With that thought, Nye Tian spread out his divine sense and carefully sensed. Indeed, he did not sense any origin power fluctuations from the other party. No wonder this person did not kill Hu Qi. It was not that he did not want to kill Hu Qi, but that he could not. "Let me test your strength." The corner of Nye Tian's mouth curled up slightly. He leaped up and stabbed out with his sword. Boundless sword intent surged out like a tide and turned into thousands of flowing sword shadows in the air, pressing over in an overwhelming manner. That person exclaimed again. This time, he was even more surprised than before. There was even an unconcealable fear flashing across his eyes. Right at this moment, the iron sword in that person's hand emitted an intense sword cry. It actually turned into thousands of sound waves in the air and rolled down. Chi. The sound waves and sword shadows collided in the void, emitting an ear-piercing sound. The air was filled with strange light and shadows, like the rippling surface of a lake. Nye Tian's figure stood in the void with a faint smile on the corner of his mouth. With this sword, he was sure that his guess just now was right. The other party did not have any origin power. It was just that the other party's iron sword was a little strange. It seemed to hide a terrifying power. "Brat, who are you?" The person with the iron sword looked at Nye Tian coldly. The look in his eyes became extremely strange. He could already see that Nye Tian actually had 3 types of sword intent in his body, and each of them was extremely terrifying. From his point of view, this was simply impossible. "You are about to die. Do you still have any meaning to know who I am?" Nye Tian said the same thing back to him. "You." The person with the iron sword was stunned and immediately said, "I am the Iron Sword Demon King, the guardian of Demon Sage Xianlong. Who are you? Why do you have such a terrifying sword intent?" "Thank you for telling me your identity, but I don't want to tell you who I am." Nye Tian smiled faintly. Of course, he could not tell the person his real identity. If he said anything else, the person would not believe him anyway. Therefore, it was better to not talk nonsense. Brat, you tricked me. The Iron Sword Demon King's eyes turned cold, and his whole body released a powerful sword intent. Unfortunately, the sword intent only had momentum, but no power. The Iron Sword Demon King was a swordsman in the Sword Soul realm. Unfortunately, he was only in the soul state. The yuan qi in his body had been eroded by hundreds of thousands of years, and had long been worn out. At this moment, as long as he had the yuan qi of a warrior in the origin spirit realm, he could directly kill Nietian. Unfortunately, he didn't have any elemental energy in his body. Iron Sword Demon King, I want to know, what is in those hanging coffins? Nietian looked up at the hanging coffins on the cliff, and his eyes flashed with a hint of passion. Humph! The Iron Sword Demon King sneered and said, Of course the coffins are filled with corpses. Do you think there will be other things? Corpses. Nietian smiled and said, Do you think I am a 3-year-old child? What kind of person's corpse is so big that it needs a coffin that is hundreds of meters long? Most of the hanging coffins were hundreds of meters long, and the biggest one was even thousands of meters long. Chapter 838. Hiss! Hearing that the Iron Sword Monster King said that the coffin contained a corpse, everyone on the ground gasped. If what the Iron Sword Monster King said was true, then it was truly too strange. Could it be that giants really existed in the ancient times? Who told you that the corpse in the coffin is a human? The Iron Sword Monster King looked at Nietian cold and smiled. Not a human? Nietian was slightly stunned and his heart sank. Could it be that the corpse in the coffin is really a corpse? But it is not a human corpse. But this is too strange. Tell me, what is in the coffin? Nietian didn't want to waste any more time with the Iron Sword Monster King. His face suddenly turned cold, and he asked in a deep voice, Do you really want to know? The Iron Sword Monster King smiled strangely and waved his long sword. He opened a path in the sword array in the air and said, Go and see for yourself. Nietian's eyes suddenly froze. The Iron Sword Monster King actually wanted him to go and see for himself. This was very surprising. Boss, you can't go. On the ground, Jean de Bao's voice suddenly sounded. If the Iron Sword Monster King was luring Nietian and suddenly sealed the sword array when he passed by, Nietian would definitely die in the sword array. Teacher, don't go. Han Tian's voice also sounded. He was very worried. This is a trap set by the Iron Sword Monster King. We definitely can't go. Everyone was discussing and they were all trying to persuade Nietian not to go. Nietian's eyes gradually turned cold as he stared straight at the Iron Sword Monster King. The latter had a calm expression, but the abyss in his eyes was still bottomless. You don't dare? The Iron Sword Monster King smiled cold and extremely provocative. Nietian didn't say anything. He looked at the sword array in the air and his brain was working quickly. The sword array in front of him was too terrifying. If he was trapped in it, he didn't have the confidence to escape. Thank you. After thinking for a moment, Nietian suddenly spoke. His eyes flashed and a terrifying spiritual deterrence pressed towards the Iron Sword Monster King. The Iron Sword Demon King suddenly felt an immense mental pressure, causing him to lose focus for a moment. At the same time, Nietian's figure flashed and directly passed through the sword formation. In the next instant, the Iron Sword Demon King reacted and immediately sealed the sword array. However, he was still a step too late. Nietian's figure had already rushed through the sword array and reached the cliff. Oh no! The Iron Sword Monster King's expression suddenly changed, and his expression froze. Nietian turned around and glanced at the Iron Sword Demon King. As expected, the latter did not keep his promise. If he had not used absolute tremor, he would have been trapped in the sword array. You are not allowed to open the coffin. The Iron Sword Demon King roared as he charged at Nietian. Boom! A surging sword intent soared into the sky. The Iron Sword Monster King had actually absorbed some of the power from the sword array and was attacking Nietian. Nietian didn't care about them at all. Instead, he dashed towards the largest coffin and stepped onto it with one foot. Since he wanted to take a look, he would take a look at the largest coffin. Nietian took a deep breath and murmured, "I want to see what exactly is inside." Kaboom! With one hand holding the lid of the coffin, Nietian suddenly exerted force. With a loud bang, the coffin that was thousands of meters wide was opened. Boom! The moment the coffin was opened, a vast and boundless power surged out from within. In an instant, the space within a radius of several hundred miles began to tremble. Unparalleled power surged in the void, and the entire space was enveloped by an extremely strong life force. At that moment, the vitality enveloped Nietian's body, making him feel indescribably comfortable. Dragon energy! Nietian immediately realized that this power was dragon energy, an extremely majestic dragon energy. At the same time, the 9 dragon veins in his body suddenly went berserk and shook violently. His body began to surge with the terrifying power of lightning. In the blink of an eye, the space within thousands of meters turned into a sea of lightning. Golden lightning wreaked havoc in the space. The lightning that was hundreds of meters long released a thrilling thunderbolt. Nietian felt as if he had lost control of his body. He looked down, and his expression instantly stiffened. A look of extreme shock appeared on his face. At that moment, the Iron Sword Monster King charged over with his sword. Before he could get close to Nietian, he was sent flying by the mighty power of lightning. Nietian, what did he see? The crowd looked at the sea of lightning in the sky and their hearts trembled violently. They didn't know what had happened to Nietian. In the void, Nietian's entire body was uncontrollably sluggish for a few seconds. Dragon! He saw a real dragon. This coffin, which was several thousand meters long, contained a golden dragon. This was a real golden dragon. Every dragon's scale, every dragon whisker, and every dragon eye was made of flesh and blood. It was a real body of flesh and blood. The golden dragon in the coffin was vivid and lifelike. Its huge eyes were like the sun and the moon, as if it would come to life at any moment. However, the next moment, the golden dragon's body started to rot at a speed visible to the naked eye. No. Nietian roared, but he couldn't control his body. He couldn't stop what was happening in front of him. The golden dragon's body turned black, rotted, and disappeared into thin air in a few seconds. It was as if hundreds of thousands of years had been compressed into a few seconds. Seeing the coffin become empty in an instant, Nietian was stunned again. Ah! However, in the next moment, he felt a heart-wrenching pain explode in his body. A surge of boundless dragon aura wreaked havoc in his body, as if it wanted to tear his body into pieces. Nietian immediately realized that the dragon aura of the golden dragon had been devoured by the sea of lightning around him. Now that the dragon aura of the golden dragon had entered his body, it was almost destroying his body. Nietian, what happened to him? The crowd saw Nietian's painful expression. His face was distorted, and their eyes were wide open. They didn't know what had happened. How is this possible? On the other side, the Iron Sword Demon King looked at Nietian with an extremely shocked expression. His voice trembled violently as he said, He absorbed the dragon aura? Nietian had absorbed the dragon aura of the golden dragon. This was something that the Iron Sword Demon King had never expected. It was also something that he thought was impossible. Nietian was a human. How could he absorb the blood and chi of the dragon clan? All of this was too terrifying. It was beyond the Iron Sword Demon King's understanding. At this moment, an even more bizarre scene happened. Boundless dragon chi surged within Nietian's body, almost tearing his body apart and shredding it to pieces. This immense pain surpassed everything. It was even more intense than when his body was tempered by the dragon vein. Nietion's facial features gradually became distorted. His face became hideous and terrifying. Slowly, the terrifying power caused his body to begin to split apart. He felt his arms and legs lengthening and enlarging. His entire body was expanding at a terrifying speed. 2 horns grew on his head. His arms and legs turned into dragon claws. Fine scales appeared all over his body. Chapter 839. Dragonification. He was indeed transforming into a dragon. Nietion's body was transforming into a dragon at a terrifying speed. This was the true dragonification. It was different from the dragon form achieved through martial arts or bloodline power. Instead, it was a complete transformation of a martial artist's body into a divine dragon's body. Everyone was dumbfounded as they stared at the scene in front of them in a daze. No words could express the shock in their hearts. Dragonification. His body is merging with the divine dragon's body. Could he be the legendary innate dragon Meridian? The Iron Sword Demon King looked at Nietion in a daze. His expression became incomparably complicated. In the void, Nietion's body was still splitting. He could no longer feel his original body. The tearing pain in his body had already become numb. Roar! Suddenly, Nietion let out a sound. It was the shocking roar of a dragon. In the blink of an eye, his body had completely transformed into a divine dragon. Dragon horns, dragon whiskers, dragon head, dragon body, dragon claws, dragon scales, dragon tail, every part of his body was extremely realistic. He had completely transformed into the body of a golden giant dragon. The golden giant dragon was thousands of meters long. When its body rolled, the entire world shook. The space was filled with a majestic dragon's aura, which spread for tens of thousands of meters. Nietion's body gradually felt something, but it was a very strange feeling. He tried to stretch out his palm, but what appeared in front of him was a huge dragon claw. This feeling was very strange. It was as if his entire body did not belong to him, but it was completely under his command. Nietion looked at his primordial spirit Yuan Meridian. Everything was still there. The raw star stone, the 9 dragon meridians, the chaotic original coffin, the 9-level chaos beast, and even the corpse demon lord. Everything did not disappear because of the transformation of Nietion's body. Roar! Nietion was slightly excited. His body rolled and directly rushed into the sky. The dark clouds in the void were all dispersed. A majestic dragon roar resounded between heaven and earth. Nietion inclined his head slightly. His eyes were like the sun and moon as he stared at the heavens. At this moment, in this entire world, he was the only king, the sovereign of the world. When the crowd on the ground saw a giant golden dragon that was thousands of meters long flying in the air, causing the heavens and earth to tremble, they could not help but feel a surge in their hearts. Their gazes gradually became blurred, and a new feeling of reverence was born. This kind of scene was too shocking. Most martial artists would never be able to see such a grand scene in their entire life. The golden colossal dragon, the king of the dragons, is a supreme existence that surpasses 9th-grade spirit beasts. Let me see just how strong the golden colossal dragon is. Nietion's heart was surging. His body rolled in the void, and he actually dove down towards the sword formation below. His current body was even larger than Di Shi's dragon soul body. It was unimaginable what kind of terrifying power this body contained. The golden colossal dragon was rumored to be even stronger than peak heavenly emperor martial artists, possessing the power to destroy heaven and earth. Boom! Nietion's figure dove down. A layer of purplish gold lightning power surged on his massive body, as though he was wrapped in lightning. The sword formation below was left behind in the ancient times. Even though it had already existed for hundreds of thousands of years, its strength was not weaker than an 8th-grade spirit formation. Nietion was precisely going to use this sword formation to test the power of the golden colossal dragon's body. However, just as his figure rushed down, he felt the dragon chi in his body suddenly converging towards the 9 dragon veins. At the same time, his body shrank rapidly. The 9 dragon veins seemed to have lost control and became black holes that absorbed dragon chi. Endless dragon chi gathered towards the dragon veins, and Nie Tion's golden colossal dragon's body shrank rapidly. In the void, the dragon's body gradually shrank. When Nie Tion's figure charged above the sword formation, his body had already shrunk to only several hundred meters in size. Right at this moment, the sword formation sensed a huge threat. A terrifying sword intent surged out of the formation, turning into hundreds and thousands of terrifying sword shadows in the air. Bang! 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 The sword shadows bombarded the golden colossal dragon's body, and a terrifying dull sound was heard. At this moment, Nie Tion felt his entire body being eroded by a terrifying attack, as though there were thousands of sharp blades cutting his body. However, he did not care, and his dragon body dove down with indomitable will. Boom! The golden colossal dragon crashed into the sword formation like a shocking bolt of lightning. The terrifying sword formation shook violently, and the entire sword formation finally revealed its complete outline. It was actually tens of thousands of meters wide, and it covered the entire sky above the valley. Whoosh! In the next moment, the sword formation collapsed directly, and the boundless runic power of the formation filled the air. The sharp sword intent surged in the air, turning into thousands of sharp blades that cut everything in the space. At the same time, Nie Tion's figure shrank even faster, and the dragon chi in his body was all absorbed by the 9 dragon veins. His figure reverted to human form, and he stood in the air. His entire body was slightly sluggish, and he was unable to react. What is going on? Nie Tion looked at his own body, and his brows were tightly knitted together. He had clearly absorbed the golden colossal dragon's dragon chi, and he should have this power. Why was the boundless dragon chi absorbed by the 9 dragon veins? This made Nie Tion feel as though he had fallen from heaven to hell. If he could completely control the golden colossal dragon's power, he would be able to kill his way to the celestial realm in the heaven realm, and seek revenge on Luo Chenhun and his daughter. Unfortunately, he only had that power for a moment, and it was all absorbed into the dragon veins. Master, the sword formation is broken. At this moment, Corpse Demon Lord's voice sounded, and it reminded Nie Tion. Nie Tion looked at the sword formation in front of him, and he felt a little better. Just now, his golden colossal dragon body had already shrunk to the size of 100 meters, but it was still able to break the ancient sword formation. If the golden colossal dragon was in its complete form, how terrifying that power would be. The golden colossal dragon was indeed the king of the dragon clan. Nie Tion estimated that if he could transform into the complete form of the golden colossal dragon again, he would be able to crush the 9 emperors of the heaven realm in an instant. That kind of power was too terrifying, and it was enough to destroy heaven and earth. Brat, you destroyed my sword formation? Just as Nie Tion was in shock, the Iron Sword Demon King's figure appeared again, and he looked at Nie Tion with hatred, and his eyes were filled with an extremely cold, murderous intent. He did not expect Nie Tion to really break the sword formation, and he did not expect what would happen next. So what? Nie Tion looked at the Iron Sword Demon King and smiled cold, and he was extremely disdainful. The sword formation was gone, and the Iron Sword Demon King could no longer absorb power from the sword formation. At this moment, he only had the sword soul realm, but he could not unleash the power of the sword will. Although the power of the sword will did not require too much elemental energy to support it, without any elemental energy, the power of the sword will could not be unleashed. At this moment, Nie Tion suddenly looked at the coffins on the cliff, and he suddenly thought of something, and his expression changed. There were tens of thousands of coffins on the cliff, and each coffin represented a dragon. That meant there were tens of thousands of divine dragons. These were real divine dragons, even though they were just corpses. Chapter 840. Suddenly thinking of the destruction of the dragon clan, Nietion's face suddenly became gloomy. According to Di Shi, the mysterious force destroyed the dragon clan in one fell swoop when it was at its peak. That was the catastrophe of the dragon clan. Even though the Dragon Emperor of the Golden Dragon united all the Dragon Clan, they were ultimately destroyed by the mysterious force. The Dragon Clan was much stronger than humans back then. Even human warriors like the 9 Emperors of the Heaven Realm might not be able to fight against an ordinary Dragon Clan, let alone a king of the Dragon Clan like the Golden Dragon. The force that could destroy the Divine Dragon Clan was definitely unimaginably powerful. And now, on the cliff in front of Nietion, the tens of thousands of giant coffins were all dragon corpses. This made him think that the Iron Sword Monster King in front of him might be from the mysterious force that destroyed the Dragon Clan. The Iron Sword Monster King looked at Nietion with flickering eyes. He couldn't understand why Nietion could absorb dragon energy. Could he be the legendary Destined One with the dragon bloodline? Destined One. Thinking of this title, the Iron Sword Monster King's heart trembled. His pupils suddenly shrank and great fear appeared in his eyes. "Kid, who are you?" The Iron Sword Monster King suppressed the fear in his heart, but his voice was trembling uncontrollably. Nietion noticed that the Iron Sword Monster King seemed to be afraid. His eyes narrowed and then he smiled faintly. "If I answer your question, will you answer mine?" "Sure." The Iron Sword Monster King replied without hesitation. Nietion shook his head slightly and said, "I don't trust you because you already went back on your words once." If Nietion hadn't used absolute tremor just now, he would have been killed by the sword formation. "Ask me first. I will answer any question truthfully," the Iron Sword Monster King said in a deep voice without any embarrassment. His eyes were still filled with great fear. "Okay." Nietion smiled faintly and asked, "Let me ask you, are the hanging coffins all dragon corpses?" The Iron Sword Monster King's eyes darkened, and he nodded slightly. "Indeed." Nietion's heart trembled, and he looked at the coffin hanging on the cliff again. As he imagined the dragon corpse inside, his expression became complicated. After calming down, Nietion continued asking, "Where did these dragon corpses come from?" Iron Sword Monster King's face darkened. His eyes trembled violently, and he looked like he was in pain. "I can't say. You must tell me." Nietionling smirked coldly. A gust of sword will whizzed out and shrouded the Iron Sword Monster King. With a single thought, he could kill the latter on the spot. Although the Iron Sword Demon King's sword Dao realm was high, he didn't have any essence force. In Nietion's eyes, he was just a lamb waiting to be slaughtered. At this moment, Nietion was speaking to him as an equal only because he respected his identity as a swordsman. "You want to kill me?" The Iron Sword Monster King's eyes widened in disbelief. "What? Can't you kill me?" Nietion's face was stern and his eyes were cold. If the Iron Sword Monster King made a move, he would definitely kill him. Sensing Nietion's killing intent, the Iron Sword Monster King suddenly calmed down. He smiled calmly and said, "You are the Destined One. Of course you want to kill me. I didn't expect the prophecy of the heavenly secret from hundreds of thousands of years ago would come true after hundreds of thousands of years." His laughter was helpless and sad, as if he was a hero at the end of his road. The Destined One? The prophecy of the heavenly secret? Hearing the Iron Sword Monster King's nonsense, Nietion couldn't help but frown. He had no idea what the Iron Sword Monster King was talking about. Forget it. This is the destiny. Why force it? The Iron Sword Monster King suddenly laughed, and his expression became relieved. His shadow shook a few times in the air and was about to dissipate. "Do you want to die?" Nietion was stunned for a moment, but he immediately realized that the Iron Sword Monster King wanted to destroy his own soul. He wanted to stop him, but it was too late. The Iron Sword Monster King released a strange black light that was flowing with black light. The Destined One, although the Dragon Tribe was destroyed by us, the Dragon Rebel Tribe, we were also used by others. If you can see Lord Black Dragon Demon Sage, please tell him for me that I have tried my best. The Iron Sword Monster King's last words resounded in the void. His soul dissipated in the void, leaving only a black light floating in the air. Nye Tian had thousands of questions in his mind, but before he could ask them, the Iron Sword Monster King destroyed his own soul, which caught him off guard. What secret was the Iron Sword Monster King hiding? Why was he so sure that Nye Tian was the Destined One? Why was he so afraid of the Destined One? And what was the prophecy of the heavenly secret that he mentioned? Nye Tian's mind was filled with even more questions. For a moment, his mind was in a mess. However, he was sure of one thing. The Iron Sword Monster King was indeed from the force that destroyed the Dragon Tribe. It seemed that the force was called the Dragon Rebel Tribe. What happened after the Dragon Rebel Tribe destroyed the Dragon Tribe? Why did the Iron Sword Monster King appear in the Forbidden Land of Wind and Cloud? Too many questions made Nye Tian's head swell. I have to figure everything out. I have to find the Black Dragon Demon Sage that the Iron Sword Monster King mentioned. Nye Tian forced himself not to think too much and made a decision. As long as he found the Black Dragon Demon Sage, he might be able to figure everything out. The Iron Sword Monster King died just like that, which was beyond Nye Tian's expectations. However, since the Iron Sword Monster King didn't destroy his own soul, he wouldn't be able to live for long. Nye Tian could already tell that the Iron Sword Monster King relied on the sword formation to survive for hundreds of thousands of years. Now that the sword formation had been destroyed, it was impossible for him to continue living. It's the power of inheritance. At this moment, someone exclaimed, and his eyes instantly turned red. Nye Tian smiled faintly and looked at the black light in front of him. It was the power of inheritance left behind by the Iron Sword Monster King. That's mine. Someone came to his senses and roared angrily. He soared into the sky and flew towards the power of inheritance, courting death. Nye Tianlong looked at that person coldly and stabbed out with his sword. A vast sword intent surged down, and with a scream, that person was smashed into pieces. Not even his bones were left. This time, Nye Tian's attack was extremely vicious. It was to intimidate others. If he didn't be more ruthless now, there would definitely be more people fighting over it. Nye Tian took a step forward and put away the Iron Sword Monster King. Although he was also a swordsman, the Iron Sword Monster King's sword intent was completely different from his. Merging with the Iron Sword Monster King's sword intent might increase his strength, but in the long run, it would only be detrimental. The Iron Sword Monster King's sword intent is majestic. It is very suitable for Duanmulu. Nye Tian muttered with a smile and prepared to leave the Iron Sword Monster King's Iron Sword Monster King to Duanmulu. The Iron Sword Monster King's iron sword was similar to Duanmulu's 8 extremities Kunwu. They were both heavy swords with majestic sword intent. Therefore, the Iron Sword Monster King's Iron Sword Monster King was very suitable for Duanmulu. In the Forbidden Land of Wind and Cloud, the first inheritance appeared and was easily obtained by Nye Tian. When the others saw how ruthless Nye Tian was, their eyes were filled with fear. Although they felt uncomfortable, they didn't dare to make a move. Chapter 841. Rumble. On the cliff, the moment the giant coffin was opened, a majestic dragon energy gushed out and spread in all directions. Suddenly, the entire world began to shake. Waves of vigorous life force filled the void, giving people an indescribable sense of comfort. At this moment, Nye Tian could clearly feel how abundant and vast the dragon energy in the space was. In the next moment, the dragon energy in the void suddenly surged into that person's body. After a heart-wrenching scream, that person's body also changed. Just like Nietian, he transformed into a dragon. Huh! The sudden scene stunned Nietian. This person could actually absorb dragon energy. Could it be that everyone could absorb dragon energy? He also transformed into a dragon. The crowd looked at the scene in the air excitedly. Their hearts trembled violently, and their eyes became red and scorching hot in an instant. Nietian opened the coffin, and he transformed into a dragon. This person opened the coffin, and he also transformed into a dragon. Did this mean that everyone who opened the coffin could obtain the power of the divine dragon? Everyone's eyes lit up in an instant, and they became completely scorching hot. The power of the divine dragon, the legendary power of the divine dragon. That was a power that was more terrifying than any inheritance. Bang! Crack! At this moment, a terrifying explosion sounded in the space. 1,000-meter-long divine dragon suddenly appeared in the void. The huge dragon's head swayed, and a pair of eyes stared at Nietian. Killing intent. Nietian felt the wild, killing intent from the huge dragon's eyes, and his face suddenly darkened. He did not know this person. Why did this person want to kill him? Suddenly, the huge dragon's body rolled over, and it actually called out Nietian's name. Huh! Nietian's eyes narrowed slightly. The overwhelming oppressive aura made it difficult for him to breathe. Hand over your dragon ring. The huge dragon spoke again, and its voice rumbled with a boundless oppressive aura. But at this moment, the dragon's body suddenly began to shrink, just like Nietian. In the blink of an eye, the 1,000-meter-long dragon turned into a human. It was a young man who looked to be in his 20s. He exuded a cold aura, and his eyes were cold and austere. It's Li Tianhao. Someone below saw this person's face and shouted. Nietian took a look and saw that the person who spoke was from Absolute Heaven Sect. It seemed that the person in front of him was from Absolute Heaven Sect. How did the people of the Absolute Heaven Sect know that he had the dragon ring? In the next moment, Nietian came to a realization and exclaimed, "You're from the 10,000 Demons Dragon Abyss? You're not that stupid. Hand over your dragon ring." A cold smile appeared on Li Tianhao's face as he said indifferently, "You're not a member of my dragon abyss. The dragon ring isn't yours. Obediently hand it over." The people of the 10,000 Demons Dragon Abyss all had dragon rings. Just now, Li Tianhao had sensed Nietian's dragon ring. What surprised him was that Nietian's dragon ring was extremely powerful. It was far more powerful than his 3-star dragon ring. In the 10,000 Demons Dragon Abyss, dragon rings were divided into 9 grades, ranging from 1-star dragon rings to 9-star dragon rings. Li Tianhao's dragon ring was a 3-star dragon ring. In the 10,000 Demons Dragon Abyss, it was already a very powerful dragon ring. Most people would have a 1-star dragon ring or a 2-star dragon ring. Even the Lord Dragon Head of the 10,000 Demons Dragon Abyss only had a 5-star dragon ring. Nietian's dragon ring had a vast aura. It gave Li Tianhao an unfathomable feeling. He could not determine the grade of Nietian's dragon ring. The people of the 10,000 Demons Dragon Abyss have already infiltrated the Absolute Heaven Sect? Nietian's lips curled up into a faint smile. He had heard from Xianyi that the 10,000 Demons Dragon Abyss had always wanted to invade the Sacred Light region. It was not strange for Li Tianhao to appear in the Absolute Heaven Sect. There might even be people from the 10,000 Demons Dragon Abyss among the other factions. At that moment, the people on the ground rushed up and flew towards the cliff. Everyone was choosing the biggest coffin, hoping to obtain the divine dragon's power. "Don't open the coffins!" Nietian shouted when he saw this. He knew that he and Li Tianhao could absorb the dragon energy because they had dragon rings. It was impossible for others to absorb the dragon energy. Opening the coffins would only cause the dragon energy in the dragon corpses to disappear for nothing. The dragon corpses would also be destroyed. These dragon corpses were well preserved. The coffins seemed to have the power to seal the dragon energy. However, once the coffins were opened, the dragon energy would dissipate and the dragon corpses would be destroyed. Nie Tian believed that if he could find the dragon's spring vein that Di Shi had mentioned, he could directly resurrect these divine dragons. However, if there were no dragon corpses, how could he talk about resurrecting them? Although Nie Tian was shouting at the top of his lungs, other than Jean de Bao and the others, no one else listened to him. Everyone wanted to obtain the divine dragon's power. How could they let go of such a powerful force in front of them? Let them open the coffins. Anyway, there are so many dragon corpses here. It doesn't matter if we lose a few dozen, Li Tianhao said indifferently with a cold smile. At that moment, someone had already opened the coffin. Surging dragon energy was released. However, that person could not absorb the dragon energy at all. He could only watch as the dragon energy dissipated into the void. The dragon corpses in the coffins quickly turned black and rotten. In the blink of an eye, they disappeared. The dragon corpses that had been preserved for hundreds of thousands of years were wasted just like that. Nie Tian felt the abundant dragon energy around him and tried to absorb it. However, he was surprised to find that even he could not absorb the dragon energy. Your dragon vein is already full of dragon energy. It is impossible to absorb more dragon energy. Li Tianhao smiled faintly. A cold look flashed in his eyes. He said, "Anyway, you already have the dragon vein. Now, hand over the dragon ring." "What do you mean?" Nie Tian frowned. He did not understand what Li Tianhao meant. The dragon ring is only used to shape the dragon vein. Since you already have the dragon vein, there is no point in keeping the dragon ring. Hand it over. Li Tianhao was slightly impatient. He knew Nie Tian's strength and did not want to fight the latter. Nie Tian frowned. He did not know that the dragon ring had such a function. However, he first merged with the 9-star dragon vein. After that, he obtained the dragon ring. After that, his Yuan meridian began to dragonize and his body began to produce dragon energy. Nie Tian had always thought that the Yuan meridian was dragonizing because of the 9-star dragon vein. According to Li Tianhao, it was the dragon ring. The dragon ring is mine. I will not hand it over to you. If you want it, come and take it. Now that Nie Tian knew the function of the dragon ring, he could not hand it over. Moreover, the Dragon Emperor's dragon soul was imprisoned in the dragon ring. How could he give it to someone else? Since you know that I am from the 10,000 demons dragon abyss, do you want to go against the 10,000 demons dragon abyss? Li Tianhao's eyes were extremely cold. His killing intent condensed. 10,000 demons dragon abyss. Nie Tian was stunned. Then, he smiled and said, I almost forgot about that. It seems that I cannot let you leave alive today. Li Tianhao was from the 10,000 demons dragon abyss. If he brought the matter of the hanging coffins back to the dragon abyss, the entire dragon abyss would be in an uproar. At that time, the 10,000 demons dragon abyss would definitely obtain the forbidden land of wind and cloud at all costs. Chapter 842. Nie Tian looked at Li Tianhao. This was the first time he had seen a cultivator from the 10,000 demons abyss. On the surface, Li Tianhao looked no different from an ordinary cultivator. However, Nie Tian could feel that Li Tianhao's primordial meridian was different from ordinary cultivators. It was a dragon-shaped primordial meridian, similar to his dragon meridian. However, it was not as strong as his dragon meridian. You want to kill me? Li Tianhao felt the murderous intent in Nie Tian's eyes and was stunned. Then, he smiled and said, You are strong, but we also have dragon meridian. You are no match for me. Li Tianhao's voice was calm and full of contempt. Although Nie Tian had displayed great combat strength, Li Tianhao believed that Nie Tian was stronger than ordinary cultivators because of the dragon meridian in his body. Li Tianhao was also a cultivator with dragon meridian, but his strength was 3 ranks higher than Nie Tian's. Of course, he was not afraid. Is that so? Nie Tianling smiled coldly. He looked at the cultivators who were still trying to open the coffins. He had to quickly finish off the person in front of him and stop them from destroying the dragon corpses. The cultivators thought that the dragon corpses in the coffins were the problem since they could not absorb the dragon energy. So, they started opening the coffins one by one. The dragon corpses, which had existed for hundreds of thousands of years and had not been damaged in the slightest, turned into endless dragon energy and dissipated in the void. The dragon energy that Nietian had absorbed flowed into the 9-dragon meridian, making the 9-dragon meridian stronger. However, it was only slightly stronger. There was no qualitative improvement. Nietian was confused. How could the 9-dragon meridian store such a large amount of dragon energy? Nietian, it is not certain who will be the one to kill who. Li Tianhao smiled coldly and immediately attacked. His body moved and turned into a strange black light. He shot out at an extremely fast speed, leaving a black mark in the air. Huh! Nietian was slightly stunned. He had never seen such a fighting style. Was he using his own martial body as a weapon? At this moment, Li Tianhao had already rushed over. The black light enveloped the void for a few hundred meters and engulfed Nietian. Courting death, Nie Tianling shouted. In close combat, he had never been afraid of anyone. Even in the current cold weather, the heavenly stone physique might not be stronger than Nie Tian's martial physique. He had the power of 160 billion stars, and with the addition of the 9 extremes war god art and the 9-star dragon vein, his martial physique was not weaker than any spiritual physique of heaven and earth. Roar! At that moment, a dragon roar resounded in the dark void. Li Tianhao punched out, and a huge fist condensed from dragon aura appeared and punched towards Nietian. Nietian's eyes couldn't help but narrow when he felt the mighty fist. Soon after, he also threw a punch, and a golden fist shadow whizzed out. Bang! The two fists collided with each other, producing a sound similar to that of metal colliding with stone. In the next moment, Nietian's figure retreated hastily. He was actually pushed back dozens of meters by Li Tianhao's punch. How is this possible? Nietian stabilized his body, and his eyes trembled slightly. He had used all his strength in that punch just now, but he was actually pushed back. This was simply impossible. He had awakened the power of 160 billion stars in his body, and with the addition of the 9-star dragon vein, his absolute strength was stronger than that of a heaven realm warrior. Yet, he actually lost to Li Tianhao head-on, which surprised him. Humph! After gaining the upper hand with one punch, Li Tianhao smiled cold and mocked. Nietian, you don't even know how to use the power of the dragon ring. Such a powerful dragon ring is a waste in your hands. If you know what's good for you, hand over the dragon ring. Maybe if I'm happy, I can spare your life. Nietian frowned slightly. Although he was defeated in that punch just now, he didn't use his true strength at all. Li Tianhao's provocation was simply courting death. However, Li Tianhao's words made Nietian slightly confused. The reason why Li Tianhao could exert such great power was because he borrowed the power of the dragon ring. Nietian didn't know what the dragon ring was at all, and he knew very little about it. It was normal that he didn't know how to use its power. If you want the dragon ring, come and get it yourself. Nietian's expression was as calm as still water, without any ripples. You're courting death. Li Tianhao roared and punched again. The roar of a dragon shook the sky, and the soaring dragon chi filled the space within a kilometer. The horrifying dragon might wreaked havoc in the space, and a frightening dragon shadow appeared, surging over. The surrounding space tightened, and Nietian felt an overwhelming pressure. At the same time, a murderous saber intent bloomed in the air, blasting towards Nietian. Hu Qi. Feeling the familiar saber intent, Nietian's eyes narrowed slightly. He didn't expect Hu Qi to attack him at this moment. The dragon shadow and the saber intent attacked at the same time. The two forces were very powerful, enough to pose a fatal threat. Nie Tian didn't panic, and his eyes were frighteningly calm. His body trembled slightly, and the sword intent all over his body gushed out crazily. He slashed out with his sword, and the surging sword intent surged out like a tide. The space shook violently, and countless terrifying cracks appeared in the void. Boom! Boom! There were endless sounds of explosions in the space, and the horrifying power wreaked havoc, forcibly tearing the space apart. Nie Tian leaped into the air and looked down at the two figures below. Li Tianhao and Hu Qi looked at each other. They didn't expect Nie Tian to be able to take on their joint attack so easily. Han Tian, don't let them open the coffins again. If anyone doesn't listen, kill them. Nie Tian shouted, looking at the crazy crowd on the cliff. Those people became more stubborn the more they couldn't absorb the dragon chi. Some of them even started to attack the coffins. In the blink of an eye, hundreds of coffins had been opened, and the air above the valley was filled with dragon chi that was so dense that it was about to liquefy. That was the body of a divine dragon, and it was wasted just like that. It was really a waste. If Dishi saw this scene, he would definitely go crazy. Okay. Han Tian agreed. From the beginning to the end, he didn't go near the cliff. No matter what Nie Tian said, he would do it. Eugene and the others also moved to stop the other warriors from opening the coffins. Nie Tian, instead of worrying about those coffins, why don't you worry about yourself? At this moment, another cold voice sounded. A figure appeared behind Nie Tian, and the condensed killing intent shrouded Nie Tian. Sikong Wuji. Before Nie Tian turned around, he had already guessed the identity of the person. He couldn't help but frown. Sikong Wuji was also among the 10 people of Sky Sword Pavilion. Before this, he had been very quiet and low-key. Even Nie Tian thought that he had come to his senses, but he didn't expect that this guy would be so gloomy and choose to attack Nie Tian at this time. Sikong Wuji was narrow-minded. He had been defeated by Nie Tian twice, and almost died in the hands of the latter twice. His hatred for the latter was higher than the sky and deeper than the sea. If he couldn't kill Nie Tian, he would never be able to rest,